So I'm here with Joey Mullen, a man who needs no real introduction here in the hobby. Uh, the DIY fish keeper, the king of DIY, the original, I mean, really the original G, top G
Chop cheese.
of aquarium category YouTuber. I mean, did it when no one else, definitely the pioneer. Let's just say that. So, how are you, man?
A lot better now. If you want to send me just that clip of a recording, I'd love to use it for my morning alarm, my ringtones.
Right, right. Well, dude, it's true, man, and it's an honor to have you here.
I
And
appreciate it.
I've been a I've been a fan and an admirer for years. Even though it's we're just covering different aspects
Yeah.
of this great hobby. I mean, it's categorically quite different, but that's why I wanted to call it the Aquarium Everything Podcast. Is I love all of it, and I'm here for all of it. And you get kind of labeled or put into niches and categories in this thing, especially in the social
Hmm.
media age, where that's just kind of
Yeah.
how everything works. You get your tribe, your followers, your following, um, and I think that you definitely have created a cat. You might be a category of one, to be honest. I mean, but you've really got a. You've kind of been able to craft your own thing, your own tribe, your own audience over the years. And
It's a cult.
yeah, yeah, and I think that's so. I think it's cool because it's actually it's an expansive thing at the same time. So
Mhm.
um, because you cover a lot of ground, I think you've even got a marine tank going now too that I saw that. So we might
Yeah.
dive into that a little bit later. But
I've done a little everything simply because of like the same thing you're saying. It's so easy to get caught into a niche. Even as a hobbyist myself, for a time in my hobby, all I cared about was stingrays and Asian arowana. And if you didn't have that, I didn't care.
right,
Um, but once I started kind of opening up a bit, it's like this big part of my heart was like, oh wow, remember when you wanted these, Joey, and you really liked that, and you wanted to
yeah,
try this, and now I got to do it, and get to meet all different types of people and learn that I'm not better than them. And stingrays and arowana are pretty awesome, but lots of other things are pretty
it's
awesome
true,
too. Because I used to
it's
think
true.
like, oh, because if you have a reef tank, maybe you don't say it out loud, but maybe you think you're a little bit better, or you're in the stingray hobby, you kind of look down. It's just a weird thing. It's an unsaid thing, but now I'm super cool with like keeping guppies, and I won't let anybody look down on anything that I'm doing or anything that I keep because I mean, man, just open your eyes. There's so much more we could do,
Yep,
especially with you guys, kind of like leading the way in aquascaping and planted tanks in North America, kind of setting the standard and trailblazing in that manner. But I think in one of your last podcasts, you spoke with a guy overseas in the Eastern Hemisphere, wherever that was.
yeah, yeah. Dennis
Um,
Wong,
and he spoke. Oh, I know that name. Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
2 hour aquarist, pretty just a well known guy with his fertilizer line and all that. He's really making
yeah.
making making a name for himself.
Yeah, and he does things just so much differently, so much more dramatically different,
Hmm.
and it was just so awesome to see. And it's so easy to trap yourself in such a minute part of the hobby, but and fall absolutely in love with it. But once I started kind of like my hobby needs to serve a greater purpose, I realized like I'm liking this way too much, way more than I thought, because I really wasn't looking forward to a certain types of fish or promoting or advocating them. And but once I had them, I was like, man, these are just as great as my other tank. So every
Yeah.
tank I set up, I'm just excited about. I'm like, this is my favorite tank now. Like I just set
Have
up
you?
another tank, and I don't think anybody's seen it, but it's now my favorite tank. I always wanted to do that, and now I get to do it. It's
That's
an
so cool, man.
interesting thing. Yeah.
You ever kept fancy goldfish?
Yeah, yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I remember when I did. It was I held a vote for the first time, and I got more votes than I had subscribers.
Wow.
Reef Builders was talking about it because I was a little embarrassed that I was keeping goldfish because it's almost like you're going back to the beginning of the hobby.
I know.
Meanwhile,
I
I've got
know. I
Asian
know.
arowana, stingrays. I have all these like
Right. Right.
higher end, difficult to keep, and then I'm keeping these little goldfish. But it was absolutely beautiful. They had an entirely blacked out tank. I think maybe the Scape, even then, which was about 8-9 years ago, I think you guys were the ones that inspired it. It was a goldfish tank, large rounded river boulders,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
and a few little plants just kind of all piled up in the center. Almost like
Yeah,
an
that's my own theme at home right now. Right behind me
yeah,
is
that's
funny
exactly what I did.
funny
Yeah.
story. Just last night, so in sort of anticipation of this podcast,
Mhm.
I had an idea to rework my tank that's here in the frame behind me, um, and kind of without thinking about the goldfish themselves too much. I
Mhm.
had an idea and I started moving on it, and I got this just over the top. I mean, just incredible piece of wood. I had to dig out from the deep private stash at ADG and the whole thing. And I got all this momentum. I got everything home, and I even started, draining the water down in the tank. And the I I don't know what's wrong with me, man, but I couldn't do it. The goldfish, they're coming up to the glass and they're doing, with the mouth and the whole thing, and just I was like, wait a minute, these I love these guys, these are my friends.
It, it's
I couldn't do it. And I ended up just kind of reworking what I had. I'd had some problems. I had wood in there with them. And
mhm.
between the messiness of the fish and the contribution of the wood to
Yeah,
kind of the water chemistry and quality, it was
too
just too
much.
much.
Yeah.
So I took the wood out and I just really, really simplified things. Um, More open space for them. Now I'm going to add a few more fish in there, but I just I couldn't do it. I had a container with aeration going to put them in. I was going to transport them back to the shop, the whole thing.
Mhm.
Couldn't do it. I said, man, I've bonded with these fish in a way that I honestly I don't often. I mean, so much of what I work with is don't have that as much of that pet quality to them.
Yeah.
If you've got a school of tetras, it's like which
Yeah.
one's Freddie, which
Yeah.
one's
Yeah.
which one's
Yeah.
Johnny.
Exactly
It's
the
hard.
point.
But
Yeah.
and I imagine with what you do and seeing so many of your aquariums there in your studio space, uh, you've definitely. I mean, you've got fish named. There's a
Mhm.
deeper
I
connection
will.
to
There
them.
is. There is. Well, it's human nature to be attached to animals with intelligence, like dogs, for example, or
Sure.
some cats. Not all cats. Some cats.
Right.
But when it comes to fish, there's also like a level of intelligence. Like, I don't think a neon tetra is that smart, but
Right.
as an Oscar, so it can become difficult to stick to. For me, it's difficult to stick to like the purpose of the aquarium gallery, which was to set up all these tanks, all these new scapes, all these new fish, make a bunch of videos on each one, and then kind of start it all over. And I talked about doing that before I had a single fish out here, but stragglers kept staying along the way. And what I've discovered is, and I might be canceled for this, but I kind of feel like saltwater fish have more personality, especially in their puffer fish.
Sure. No, I know where you're going with that, and I think there's some truth to that. Just in the sense that in a saltwater tank, there is a tendency to have more of like single individuals
Yeah.
of a given type. If you've got a school of green chromis or something,
Mm-hmm.
less so. But because we
Yeah.
often have, a distinctive species of tang and a particular species of wrasse or whatever it may be,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then too, I think just being reef animals, there is that's a whole different dynamic that might
Yeah.
demand more a higher, can we say, intelligence even. And
Mm.
that's what happened to me with the goldfish
I
is
guess it's
now
more.
I know them as an individual so much that
Yeah.
I feel a
Just
bond, and
attached
I'd
to
sort of
them. Yeah.
forgotten that I was even, to be honest, capable of that. As I've been treating my approach to aquarium has been so much design, aquascaping, kind of creating the whole scene kind of vibe. And so I thought, well, I'm just going to create a new scene back here. What do I care?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well,
my wife even got a little teary about it, that that she was like,
it's exciting.
because
It's a whole
she
nother
loves them
level.
too. Yeah, and she couldn't
Yeah.
believe that I had bond, because I've redone this tank 100 times, and that I
Mm-hmm.
had bonded with these fish enough to not do that. But I
Well,
think you're absolutely right that some of the marine fish have a
they can be, but
yeah.
I think Frank kind of started it all for my channel in terms of opening my eyes and just the audience were far more attached. They get so attached to certain things, to certain animals, and even yourself. Um, so it's no wonder that you are getting, attached, and you see that individual, almost personalities with the fish, and the goldfish. But the interesting part about that tank, and this is in my humble opinion, but I believe that tank will get more people into the aquarium hobby than any other planted tank, for a few reasons. Everybody knows what a goldfish is, but you've
Sure.
done it so beautifully, and it looks so elegant, yet it's attainable.
Right.
Uh, I feel like I could easily do that.
Sure.
Mind you, you place the rocks a certain way. That's the way you're able to do something, is to make it look like it's just so naturally occurred like that.
Right.
But they are placed a certain way. You probably spun each rock a few different ways and kind of take a step back. And it didn't take 5 minutes like my tanks do, but I could guarantee you that tank is going to do wonders for the hobby, just like my original goldfish tank did. So many people loved it, and it stopped a lot of people from hating on the common goldfish and fancy goldfish, simply because like it can be kind of cool if done the right
Yeah.
way. But
For sure.
I do think the best scape for fancy goldfish is like the rounded rocks, a little bit of
Hmm.
plants, all kind of centered in the tank. You
Right.
go all the
They
way
need a lot of
around it.
space. It's
Yeah.
not. I cut off the filters when I feed them, so the food can just go down to the bottom, and they can eat as they like. They'll kind of eat, and then they go off and look like they're chewing or digesting for a minute, and they circle
Hmm.
back and want to eat some more.
Yeah.
So it's a whole vibe and a whole thing. And it's funny that and it's what I love about the perspective, uh, because you're able to look at that and go, man, there's a chance that that does something to inspire somebody, or there's a relatability to it. Okay,
Hmm.
so on the other hand, um, there's and it's normal. It's just something that I guess is something. It's something I have a particular awareness of, but there's definitely a crowd who again is rolling their eyes and going, why would Jeff waste his time on
Yeah.
this boring thing, or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and it's funny, and it's challenging sometimes to not fall into the uh, what you perceive as your tribe to be
Yeah.
saying about something that you're doing. And it's something that, again, when you do a lot of different kinds of tanks, you
Hmm.
start to become more and more free from that. And it's something
Yeah.
I think is cool about what you do with you've got a
Yeah.
space where you can just dedicate it to trying this, trying that.
Got to keep
Really
doing
cool
stuff.
stuff. So I was going to ask too, man, just in general, what are you up to? What's going on with you? What's the current events for you right now? Because I did see that I saw a post about wanting to get back out to some clubs, kind of
Hmm.
get back to the heart of the
Yeah.
hobby, and you're offering to do uh, some in-person presentations and to show up for
Yeah.
giving some talks and whatnot with clubs, and that you're just really putting yourself back out there at that grassroots level.
Yeah, it's been an interesting last 2 and 3 years. A lot of things have changed in my life, and it's come to the point where I wasn't happy with anything anymore. Like I was just not happy with a lot of things. And when you're not happy, you really got to make some changes. And I thought to myself, like, what do I really want to do with my life? Do I want to pursue some of the other businesses um, that I work on? Do I want to just stop YouTube? Is YouTube the source of my unhappiness? So I kind of took a break from YouTube, just kind of like figuring things out. Because I mean, after well over a decade, it's like 15 years now, but um, to be on that grind for that long and posting that many videos continuously, and your entire hobby is always on display for the entire world to kind of pick and poke at. I thought maybe I don't like this. Maybe I need a break. But the longer the breaks went on, the more I realized like I have no clue who I am without aquariums, and even YouTube is such a huge part of who I am and what I really enjoy doing. Um, so I was like, okay, let's make sure we stick to YouTube. But what else can I make some changes? I felt the pressure of being like the number one guy for so long. Um, and these days, like there's tons of people just blowing up overnight, and I kind of feel bad for them. Hopefully they don't experience too many negative side effects from doing that. Mine was more of a slow burn, so I was kind of almost conditioned for it. But uh, my biggest thought was, the biggest stress on my shoulders was like I always have to do something huge and something big, and that's just really not who I am. The gallery was the biggest thing I had ever done literally in my life, and people are like, "What's next? What's next? What's
Right.
next?" So I was like,
Yeah.
"Man, I guess it'd be cool to open the doors, but I can't open the doors to the public on 7 feet from my house. My house is 7 feet away from this wall. Tiny little alleyway to go between them. It's on private property. I can't really open the doors. Just so many issues with that. Um, so okay, let me lease a place and fill it with tanks. And uh, then I had problems with the owner of the building, putting me like 2 years behind schedule, which would have costed me hundreds of thousands of dollars. I had to abandon that. Um, and the biggest surprise there was I was going to film the whole process. I was going to make it self-sustaining, so I didn't actually have to make money off it from visitors. So I was talking about, yeah, there will be a fee to get in and stuff, but the surprise was it was going to be for free. But I'm not going to stay there all day. It was going to be open 3 nights a week, something like that. And you
Yeah.
schedule in, I'll do the tour, and that was about it. Maybe other times I'll schedule at birthday parties or something like that. I don't know. I was really excited about that. That didn't happen, so that taken out from under me. And I'm kind of back to a square one, and I'm thinking, what do I want to do? How will I maintain happiness and keep going and stay motivated? Because you have to wake up every morning with purpose. Um, you have to and my purpose is likely for the rest of my life going to be centered on the aquarium hobby and the industry. So I thought, why don't I just build another building on my property, turn it into a breeding facility, maybe quarantine. We'll do that next year. And maybe the year after that, that building will now just turn into import and breeding and quarantine. And I open up a store. All fish are quarantined off site, brought in off site. Maybe I do something like that. And I think that is what the plan is. But what am I going to do with all this? First and foremost, I'm renovating my basement. I'm turning in that into probably going to be one of the most jaw dropping things I've ever done, but it's taking forever.
Right.
And then the gallery, I want to actually come out here and enjoy the tanks. But I did find that walking into a big building with just a bunch of tanks scattered just wasn't the vibe I was looking for. So I started building these walls up, sectioning it off, putting out the couch, like lining things up so each room has something really cool to offer. So the first room, of course, is the 700-gallon with the piranha tank planted. The computers, things like that, where you can kind of get a little bit of work done. Close the door so it's really quiet, or I can come sit out here on the couch, enjoy the 2000, maybe look at the saltwater tank or the freshwater tank there. And then there's more tanks built into the wall that separates this room, and I can go back there and I can tinker around and build little things and test things, and so it's kind of like an aquaponics room. And I'm really enjoying that. So I guess right now there still was something missing. I kept thinking, like, how did I get into the hobby? What really started me? How do I help? You know, because the youth is the future of our industry and our hobby. And if we continue, I remember one time I was at a talk, doing a panel, and they asked, what do you think the future of the hobby is? And I already knew that at that time, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, whatever that was, that I was going to be the future of the hobby because I was becoming more and more influential. And I thought to myself, do I really want to lead the industry? I'm not stable enough to do that. I'm a normal guy with tons of personality, and what comes with tons of personality is tons of things you could possibly say or do wrong. And I thought to myself, this is why I'm getting Rachel O'Leary to do YouTube. This is why I'm getting some of the old timers in the hobby to embrace social media. I need you guys to be in the place where the ears and eyes of that next generation of hobbyists is going to be. Otherwise, you're going to have people like me running the show. And that's kind of what it is. Now, the most influential hobbyists are media creators. And a lot of the times, not to throw too much shade, but they're a lot younger with very little experience, but they definitely know how to game the algorithm and get those views, which is fine. I'm not jealous. I do good myself. I do really well myself. But I don't know if they are responsible enough,
Right.
or have the the integrity or ethics required to maintain this in the long run. Like, where will they be in 15 years?
Sure.
What is the next generation? So for me, I got in the hobby, getting into the organized hobby. I was only in it for about a year before I discovered a local aquarium club. I joined immediately. I was absolutely floored by what it was like. This was kind of before I I just had gotten onto the internet a year prior, and we're talking 19, 20 years ago.
Right.
And I was surrounded with people that didn't know who I was, didn't care who I was. They just wanted to see my fish tanks. I was like, damn, I could reinvent myself. I don't have to live up to everybody in my life and friends' expectations of me. I could really change myself and move forward. And I did. The next year, I was on the board of directors. The next year, I was the vice president. Then I became the president of the club. And then I turned that aquarium club into the largest by membership aquarium club in Canada within 6 months. A year after that, or 6 months after that, you can only be president for 1 year. My term was up. The membership didn't want me to go. So the entire membership, I think it was like all the votes to one. So one person said no, but everybody else said yes. Dissolve the society and give this to Joey. I had to take on all the financial responsibilities, everything. I wasn't making money out of it. And I was just so in love with what I was doing. I did that for a couple of years. Then I selected 4 members and I gave everything to them and focused on YouTube.
When or how did it occur to you that like there's something on YouTube was a thing or a destination, or I mean, was it like something you just started doing? Was there intention, I guess is what I'm trying to say, to you're kind of getting into that as far as seeing potential reach, or it just seemed like another cool way to expose what you were doing, or what was there was there a business plan there?
It wasn't at first. The reason why the local club was so successful is I was the new generation. I had so many new ideas. I knew what was working, what wasn't working. I had so much energy, and I was using YouTube at the time, but mostly just to upload to. But I thought to myself, if I can have such a big impact locally, YouTube's worldwide. So I started like uploading a little bit more, but it was mostly just updates and whatnot. But when I decided I got to take YouTube serious, I was looking at other channels that were growing and that were huge. LA Fish Guy, I don't know if you know who he is, but
yeah, I remember.
He had like 10,000 subscribers. He was the biggest.
That was a big deal back then.
Yeah, he was the biggest. Bulk Reef Supply, Mr. Saltwater Fish Tank, Dustin's Fish Tanks. Who else? New York Stilo. There was a few hardcore channels, but they're all about something. I was like, if I'm going to do this, what am I going to be about? Because I'm just a mix mash of everything. And I was like, well, my do-it-yourself projects are the most popular. I deleted everything else and I just started doing do-it-yourself projects once a week. I did that for a couple of years before people were like, Joey, you're the king of DIY. You're the DIY king. You're the king. You're the best at this DIY aquarium stuff. And I was like, man, that has a way better ring than Waru Joey, because nobody can pronounce Waru Joey. They can't spell it. And it certainly doesn't rank well in the algorithm. So I was like, okay,
cool
the king
ass
of DIY.
fish, though.
Yeah. So I changed my channel name to the King of DIY. It was like community inspired and kind of picked. It's not like self-proclaimed or self-named, although these days, I own that name. But it was probably a mistake, because even the King of DIY, there's no telling what that's about. Okay, he does do it yourself. I probably should have picked a different name of some sort.
Yeah, they're thinking you're going to build a tool shed, or you're going to show you how to change your own oil.
How to fix the washing machine.
Right.
Mine's broken, so that's where that's coming from.
Right.
We'll be fixing it. So I made, and I never knew that one day I would build a gallery, but, or anything like that. But anyways, you could see where my beginnings were, and it was all community based, and promoting and growing and being responsible and maintaining integrity. And integrity for me was everything. I left so much money and sponsorships and deals and offers on the table. I said no. And maybe we can get into that later, but when you are sponsored, doesn't matter what you say to your audience. Oh, I'm going to say what I want, or do this or do that. No, you're not, or you're going to lose your sponsorship.
Right. Yep.
It's simple as that. So the integrity part, I don't believe it, but I thought to myself, what's one thing I got to do? I used to do a lot of speaking. I hate the traveling part, but the impact that I was having on clubs was like, they're like, oh, this is the largest attendance we've ever had. Our memberships are doubling. All of these positive things that will follow them for years. It'll take one day out of my time to have an impact on that local club for life. But the channel got big. It's blowing up. I'm too important for these little clubs anymore. I'll focus on the highest paying conventions and that's, everybody at once, more bang for their buck, and I can get it more people and meet 1,000 people instead of 100 people. And so I started doing that. But then that's a political scene, and I'm helping people pad their pockets as opposed to grow the lifeblood of a hobby, which everybody cannot remember or cannot forget is local fish stores and fish clubs. Without those, we do not exist. It's
Yeah.
very simple. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll survive a couple more years with the fish that we have, but I mean, with no stores, and they will go out of business if we don't support them, and no fish clubs that are responsibly um, curating their local hobby and building up future hobbyists. If it wasn't for my local fish club, I wouldn't exist. So I thought, what should I do? What would make me happy again and wake up with feeling like I truly have purpose again? And that is to do what's right. And that is to promote the fish clubs and the fish stores. The fish stores that have opened in the last 3 years. And I say that because 2 years ago we were in, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say the words or the descriptions of what
Right. Yeah.
happened, or the lockdown. We were
The
in the
unnamed virus.
yeah, we were in the lockdown, and some stores had just opened up, and a lot of them couldn't survive the lockdown. So I'd love to come back and bring awareness. Awareness is everything to the survival of a fish store. Simple as that. It doesn't matter what their service is like or their prices or whatever. If you know you have a local fish store, chances are you're going to go to it. I don't have a single one. I got to drive an hour away to get to one. But a lot of people don't know about those stores. And as soon as I started promoting, those stores we used to never have fish stores in my area that could survive longer than about 12 to 18 months before they would shut their doors.
Yeah.
So that was the original reason why I started touring my local fish store. First fish store I ever did tour was my local fish store. And that almost went viral. And then I kept doing more fish stores and more fish stores. So I was like, man, this is so beneficial to film these fish stores. It's mutually beneficial. People like them. I'm getting the views,
Yeah.
They get the exposure. It worked out fantastic. But
It's a very noble thing, man. That's really that's admirable. I think that may be a side of your story that is often not well known, or people are
well,
watching a video, they have some opinion or criticism of that particular video, and that
mhm,
forms in their mind, that's who you are, what you do. And I think that backstory, and that, I mean, you can hear it in your voice, man. There's an authenticity to your, when you talk about integrity. I mean, you've walked that walk, and it's like, and you acknowledge, hey, it's mutually beneficial. But this exposure for the
mhm,
local fish store, the clubs, that's some grassroots stuff that has a genuine ripple effect in things. That's
yeah,
not just going after well, I'm going to wear the ball cap of whatever filter company gave me the free one for the
yeah.
video, or I'm going to make sure I'm sipping coffee from their coffee mug or whatever.
But
That's going
there
out
was
there
a
and doing it, man.
domino
That's
effect to
cool.
it. There's a domino effect though, because a lot of creators don't really create new content or come up with new concepts. They'll just do what's working. So the fish store tours, everybody does fish store tours now. Perfect.
Right.
Fantastic.
Sure.
Now we're
Sure.
helping out more than you think. Nobody used to really film events, or YouTubers, or that they never even went to events. I started going, started filming, started making everything look way better than they are. And to be fair, I've never been to an event that should take me longer than 2 hours to see everything, and I can go home. Get everything I want. But we're getting them to come and stay there for 2 and 3 days now.
Right.
Lots of things a lot of positive impact can happen if you just take the risk and do it yourself. Take that one on the chin and see if it's going to work. But yeah, I do know that there's been some people like me, some people don't like me, but I can spend all day defending myself to people that don't care anyway. Even if they hear the truth, what are they going to do? Do you think they're going to apologize and be like, "Oh, Joey, I didn't know," or they'll take something out of context, or whatever the case might be?
A few might,
They
but yeah,
don't.
you're right.
They
You're
never
right.
do. So,
By
and
and
I learned that a
large,
long time ago. I'm like, I don't care what you think about me. I know the truth, and my
right.
kids know the truth, and my fiance knows the truth, and that's basically all that matters. And then, like, the real creators know the truth as well.
Right.
And or people who have met me in person, as opposed to, well, I seen him talking for 3 minutes on the internet, so I hate him, I don't like him. And that was a
Right.
big fear of mine when I started making videos when I started when I was 25 years old. I'm going to date myself, and it sucks because I'm going to be 40 in a couple months. I don't care, but it just sounds old. I never
It's
thought
all
I'd be
right.
40. I thought I was going to be like in my 20s forever. But when I started making videos at 25, first thing I thought about was nobody's going to take me serious because I look too young. Second thing was they're going to make fun of my appearance. They'll find something. Everybody finds something to make fun of somebody on the internet, especially at the time because trolling was at an all-time high.
Is that why now were you lifting back then? Because
No,
the arms are impressive, brother. So I mean, clearly there's
that has everything to do with me pushing 40. My metabolism slowed down.
right.
I barely work out. Maybe 3 days on, 3 months off. Like I think I went to the gym twice last week, and then I was like, yes, I'm Ronnie Coleman now. But then I haven't gone since.
Right.
Just I've worked out since I was 15, so I can maintain and carry things along for the rest of
Sure.
your life. So kids, start exercising young. It's a lifelong habit that you will carry forever. And there's never really been any negative side effects from exercising.
Right. Of course.
So I worried about my appearance, worried about my age, worried about not being taken seriously. So I decided if I'm going to be on camera, and it was how to build an acrylic aquarium, I was like, I have to be on camera. I decided I'm going to be a robot. Hi, everybody. Joey here again, and welcome back. So in
Right.
today's
That thing.
video,
Yeah. That
yes,
thing. Yeah.
but I hated every minute of it because
Right.
then
Yeah.
I was like, well, now I can't mess up what I'm saying. So I got to script it. And then I had scripts behind the camera that I'm reading from. And I'm like, what is the point of this? I'm not a company. I don't care if people buy my product or not because I don't have a product for you to buy.
Right.
And then the gallery happened. I was too much to do to like script, and so I just started like vlogging. I did a few before that, and they were really popular. People really enjoyed it, but I was embarrassed. I thought, you guys aren't going to like my personality. I have dark humor sometimes. I sometimes curse a lot. That's the hardest thing that I do now is try not to swear when I'm on camera. I can't help it. I'm not going to curse. I'm glad you booked this earlier. Otherwise, I like to have a beer with my friend, and then I'm
right.
at the end of it slurring. And
No, I know. I've debated that on the podcast in general, just, because when I'm just speaking in normal or I'm
yeah,
talking to people I know or
yeah,
whatever, I mean, it's just a normal part of language for
yeah.
me.
It's probably
But
it might slip out here and there. I think it'll
sure,
be
which is fine.
okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
but just don't make a habit out of it. I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
the
I kind of
at
go,
the
I sometimes go, do I need to use that
yeah,
word if I'm speaking in terms of a broad audience, and
yeah,
it's aquarium content at the end of the day. Um, I don't need to, there's not much to prove in that category. And I'd rather, you know, some young person whose parents still, maybe they monitor what they look at
yeah.
online and this kind of stuff. I don't want them to have a problem with it because I'm just over the
Well,
top dropping F bombs every other sentence. But
every
I
other
mean,
yeah,
it is
that's what
how
I
I
mean.
speak in real life, but it's,
Yeah,
I don't know.
the
I
odd
feel
curse
you on
word
that
is
though.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
the odd curse word's going to be fine. But
Sure. Some
so I was
podcasts,
worried
you see
about
the interviews and they're really, I mean, it's definitely something where just all bets are off and they're just, cursing and doing whatever they need to do
yeah.
to make the
There's two
conversation.
ways.
But
There's two ways to curse though. There's a couple ways to curse though. There's one where you're emphasizing a sentence or you're using it often, but it's kind of the way you talk. And then there's people that it seems like you're just trying to swear.
yeah, yeah,
So, and I don't like that. I find that a little bit annoying. But
sure.
so yeah, getting on camera for the first time was really nerve wracking and whatnot. But over time, I've become more and more and more comfortable. It's not like I was made for this. I think deep down I probably was. I do have a background in most of my career outside of YouTube's been sales, and you do have to be pretty personable and be somewhat of a character. But
Sure. I can see you being a hell of a salesman. That's for sure.
yeah, I
I
was
can
always
see
number
really,
one.
I can see you thriving in that actually. That makes,
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
I liked it. Outside of YouTube, I thought, what if I wasn't doing YouTube? What would I do? And I tell people, I don't really know, but I'd probably be selling real estate or cars. As dirty as
Sure.
like selling cars sounds,
Uh,
I like it.
yeah, there's a lot of aspects to it. Practically everybody needs one.
Yeah,
And yeah, there's a huge spectrum of possibility there.
yeah.
It's not just the guy down at the shady used car lot trying to hustle you. You get into the level of like high end or luxury automobiles,
Yeah,
and there's
yeah,
a lot of um, that's high level sales.
yeah.
That's a different
That's what I
game.
would
There's
do.
no shame in that. But so you've got a, have you done marine tanks before? Is this marine
Yeah.
project something that you're kind of stepping back into, or?
You know,
Um,
I think my first saltwater tank might have been around 10, 15 years ago, something like that. And it was a saltwater tank with some coral. I've done reefs up to 375 gallons. I've had more than 10 saltwater tanks, probably closer to 20 at this point. But to be entirely and completely honest, I like them for a little bit and then I lose entire and complete interest.
right.
And people are like, well, wait till you get into the coral. I was like, coral's the problem. I like the fish.
Sure.
And I like some of their predator fish and some of their bigger saltwater fish. So,
You know, and that scene, Joey, is still pretty. I don't think there's not been a lot of action in social media, et cetera. Anyway, with that category, you know, the fish only marine aquarium is one I'm always going. Why is this not more done? Oh, and if it is, I mean, clearly there's people doing it, and there's accounts out there, but I think there's a lot of area for expansion in that side of things because
mhm,
I mean, fish are hard. I mean, the fish might be more challenging than the coral in a lot of ways, as you've probably experienced. Um, at the same time, to me, a fish only marine tank is there's a lot of opportunity to focus because when you have
mhm,
coral, you tend to have a lot of different kinds of coral. You've got some from totally different region. You got a lot of things chemistry wise going on in there, but if you've got good light, good skimmer, I mean, there's some things to kind of normalize the environment.
mhm,
I don't know. I just feel like the marine fish thing could be, especially you get into the predator fish and stuff like that.
yeah,
Because look how big the monster fish freshwater category has gotten. I mean, that's got a huge following out there. I mean, you guys, in a lot of there's even a definite identifiable style of that tank now. You know,
yeah,
you've got the arowanas, there's maybe some pike cichlids in there, uh, stingrays.
yeah,
There's always, you know, some big shovel nosed cat or, you know, in their generally bare bottom, maybe there's like one piece of wood in there or something.
yeah.
Definitely
It's a
these
basic
guys,
template.
yeah, there's a vibe to it that I've seen kind of become the monster fish thing. Could maybe use a little more escaping in my view, but it's hard with all those big fish.
Yeah,
It's kind of like the goldfish. You got to give those animals a lot of space, you know.
yeah,
But you know, I could see you applying that kind of approach to, like you say, the predator marine tank.
mhm,
It's done, but it's not. There's not a lot of action out there for it. I think that's something that could be opened up more. I think it's actually probably more accessible than a full blown reef tank, you know, because you could have a big aquarium, but with fewer actual animals that you can really focus on. You can focus on their feeding, their care. You're not trying to keep this whole, you know, dynamic ecosystem thing going,
yeah.
kind
With
of like
levels.
goldfish and, you know, your Oscars and pet fit, you know, if you've got a big cool moray eel in there with the grouper and the, you know, the whole, those are characters. Those are pets. Those are, they got a name. That's a friend. You know, that's it's got a vibe to it. I don't know.
With
I could see you blowing that up actually.
this the with the saltwater fish, a lot of them, those tanks can actually be run like a freshwater aquarium, and that's what I'm doing with most, and I've been advocating and promoting it. Not even using a protein skimmer because we already have the rock in there. We have tons of biological filtration. In most cases, I'm just using a canister and low lighting. And being incredibly successful with it. Once the tank is completely cycled and whatnot, and everything's balanced, you're really not going to run into many issues with it. But when it comes to right now, I'm keeping lionfish and puffers, but and longhorn, uh, cowfish, and shrimp, and lots of fun little things that seem to
Yeah.
be a little bit more advanced. But uh, for example, I kept lionfish about 3 years ago, and I took so much heat from the internet, I just rehomed it. They're like, Joey, this is so irresponsible. How could you promote keeping lionfish? They're so invasive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I buckled. I wanted everybody to like me. Um, and then recently, I'm thinking, you know what? There's no evidence that hobbyists caused the invasion in some of the reefs all over the world with lionfish. There's scientists are thinking that the egg simply blew there. There's simply too much of a population explosion for one or two lionfish to have caused that. Um, and when it comes to keeping them in your home aquarium, I don't really think anybody's releasing them to the wild anyways because they're good eating. People catch them and eat them.
Sure.
But when people are like, "How could you dare keep a lionfish?" It's one less one in the wild.
Well, you know this thing, man. That's looking for that's what do they call it? The virtue signaling or whatever. This
Yeah,
thing that's an
without
internet
doing anything.
phenomena. They're looking to
Yeah,
come and find anything to, it's, oh, he's got a lionfish. I know that there's some controversy around them. They've become, profoundly invasive in certain regions in the wild. I get all that, but this, I don't know. I
I didn't know what
honestly,
I didn't know what virtue signaling or cloud chasing or anything like that. I didn't even know what it was at the time.
there's no matter what
Um,
you do in this thing, somebody will find something to
yeah, yeah,
pick
yeah.
apart, or
Mhm.
whatever. I mean, lionfish has been around in the marine aquarium for a long time. For all of a sudden, too many hobbyists release them in the wild, and I mean, it started in Florida. I think is the
Yeah,
origins of that, which kind of makes sense. I mean, you've got a
we know what they're doing.
ton of distribution and importation, and like there's a lot of fish operation that
Mhm.
happens in Florida. And
You
so,
know, the
there could be
Oscars
more of an
and
opportunity for
bass and
things. Yeah, I mean, we have that here in Houston in the bayous, where I mean, there's all kinds of tropical fish, giant, plecostomus, and you can catch Oscars and those things because we're borderline tropical here. And if we don't have a cold enough winter, uh, clearly these fish are surviving
yeah,
in because people have been catching them and for years and years. There's even guys that fish specifically for that stuff
yeah.
in the
Put up a good
bayous and
fight.
stuff, right? So I don't know. It's always been a thing. It's why we can't have fish that I'm obsessed with, man.
Mhm.
Asian arowanas,
Yeah, snakeheads.
stingrays. I mean, I've had the only way I can do it is my that's the only way I can honor my red Asian arowanas on my tattoos because they're profoundly illegal here. I'm always jealous of my
I
Canadian friends that can
wonder.
keep this
I
stuff.
wonder if you should look through the loophole, look into it. I've told a number of creators this. You guys are an educational
Yeah,
facility with
we have looked at that.
at,
It's pretty
at least
pricey.
10 years.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's kind of
but
price.
you
It's
will be
the
the only ones.
That's true. That's true.
And what is
Um,
that worth? What
yeah,
is
and
that
that's
worth?
not to say no one's ever gotten one and brought it back here, whatever that goes on. But
Oh yeah, that's a
it
horrible idea. Ten
it's
thousand dollar fine minimum,
yeah,
and what
it's
up
just too
to
risky.
5 years
Obviously,
in
I
prison.
can't do that. It would be
It's not about
spotted,
risking that either.
be
Yeah,
spotted too easily or
they're
whatever
coming
to me.
across the borders with suitcases of Asian arowana.
Yeah,
10, 20 of them, and that might be a fish that I would pay 2,000 for, but they're bringing them to the States and they'll sell for 10, 15, 20,000. But you
easy.
get caught, it's no different than trying to sneak an elephant over the border. These are a highly endangered and protected species of fish. Highly endangered is their wording, not mine. I don't
Well, that's
necessarily.
old. That's nonsense now.
It's
I mean,
old data.
there
Yeah,
is no reason we shouldn't be able to keep a uh, captive bred and raised animal it's even a hybridized domesticated version of the endangered
exactly.
species, and they've got a chip in them. They've got, I mean, there's
It's
it makes
interesting
no
that the
sense
farms
there.
aren't advocating.
I
It's
know it.
interesting too that the farms aren't advocating to it, because how does commerce work? Supply and demand. What if
Yep,
supply jumps by 350 million people? And on average, what is it in the United States? 1 in 10 or 2 in 10, something like that, have a fish tank?
yep,
Something
it's
like
about
that.
right.
So you're looking
It's about
at
right.
a new customer base of easily 50 million in a first world country. These people do have the money.
I know.
I don't know why they don't get together and figure things out.
Seriously, I've been
I'm
wondering this for
happy.
years.
The
There's
price will
been
go
some
way up, but
campaigns. Yeah, there's been some
yeah,
campaigns here to legalize arowana and other
yeah.
things, and it's just that doesn't have sufficient lobbying and everything else to get it
Hmm.
past the legislation. It's old CITES stuff, and
Yeah,
so that fish is still named on there. You know,
yeah.
congressman can't be bothered with some aquarium hobby, something like you say. Yeah, there's just not enough. If there was enough of a voice about it, going, look, these are this is not the wild animal. This is not collected in the wild and then being kept in my aquarium. These are farmed. I mean, they're so trackable as well. It makes no sense. It's a problem we have here, and I guess there's a little bit of the invasive factor too. In because you can drive up, you know, to the Midwest, you can get up into Michigan or whatever and buy piranha all day. and
Mhm.
any fish store's got them. But they're super illegal here, and rightfully so.
I
But
think if anybody does battle it, it will be a losing battle unless the right people get behind it that have money. I think
right,
first and foremost, the farms in Singapore, Thailand, those types of places, they're going to have to first lobby and pool their resources together. Then we'll need somebody like Sandy from Seagrass Farms,
yeah,
um, who's got the money and stands to benefit off it if she could bring them in. And big heavy hitters within the hobby that have that type of influence,
yeah,
or at least like a business that sells and does that sort of thing, and they have the money to kind of pay the lawyers. If that were to happen, there is no house that I won't stand on top of and scream and help them.
yeah,
But if we just have some guy that's, down in Maine or something, and he's like, Joey, share this. We're trying to get these as many likes on this post, and that's not going to do anything.
right.
It's just a waste of time and
Not at the
energy and
legislative
resources. And
level. Yeah,
yeah, it's
unfortunately.
more of a a fluffy fun feeling if you get a bunch of likes, or on change.org or something. That I don't even know if anything really changes from there, especially a fish that might have 10,000 supporters or something like that. But if
Right.
if, if there was a real plan in place, I would definitely get behind that and help as much as I can, and I would force everybody I know to help with me. um so
I
I
love it, man.
yeah, I would
No,
just
we
get
would.
mad. Like, I've
I would.
gotten mad at people for not helping say things or do things with me in the hobby, or to advocate or whatever. I'm like, if you don't do anything about this, I don't know if I want to be even talk to or be your friend anymore.
Right.
Like, because I'm so passionate about this, and if you're not with me, you're against me, and I don't expect you to go with me on everything. Like, let's be realistic. But if it were, I'm just using this as an example because if it came to arowana, the Asian arowana, and getting them legalized, captive bred legalized,
Right.
then I would totally you know be a champion for it. But it's weird to me because I'm seeing people in the States now getting the pig nosed turtle, and as long as it's city certified, then it's and it comes and it can be proved that it's captive bred, you can have them. There's not
Right.
nearly as many of those as there are Asian arowana.
I
It makes
know.
zero sense to me,
It just
and
makes
I
zero
can't even get a
sense.
turtle in Nova Scotia.
It really, you can't that now
Yeah,
that you can't have up there,
yeah, I
or
can't
just
have
can't.
turtles. Salmonella, like, it's ridiculous. I don't know
Oh
who
my.
made that law in 1842 when they were
Right.
coming over on the boats and whatnot. But I don't
Well,
even
and
know if Nova Scotia.
it becomes almost when an urban legend becomes actual written into laws.
Yeah,
I be afraid, right? I mean, and that's
yeah,
been going on for a long time. It's like people are afraid of getting salmonella from eggs from the supermarket, or picking it. That's only on the shell. So the inside of the egg I mean, the shell may have it, yes, but the inside, the part you're going to eat, cannot have those kinds of uh, pathogens or
no,
contaminants, or like that's not even a thing. But the number of people that think that's the whole egg is somehow suspect, or what, it's the same kind of thing. It's like
yeah.
uh,
But
somebody picked up a disease once from an animal, and now it's taken way too far.
the CFIA, which is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, is so stringent and so strict. And I had no clue how bad it was until some of the first times I went to the United States, and I would go to places like McDonald's or some place that, like, we have for sure, Subway, those types of things. And I noticed a distinct taste in your guys' lettuce and produce compared to ours. And it is night and day. I'm like, that
Really?
wasn't I don't think that was lettuce that I just had.
Right.
Is much different here. I don't know if it's rinsed better or it's cleaner or grown without like chemicals or something. It's just so much different here. And Lord knows, maybe we get our lettuce from the States and I'm oblivious and just think Canadian food tastes better. But I've imported a ton of fish before, and even like worms, and the CFIA have shown up at my house and demanded to see the containers, the
Wow.
animals, the paperwork, that sort of thing. And they were coming at like some of the most bizarre times, and always like 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes I'd be like, no, I'm not showing you anything. It's my hobby, it's my fish. They're like, you have about 10 minutes to produce the paperwork, or we're going to put red tape around your building and you won't even be going in there. I was like, okay.
Wow.
Oh, I was like, just give me a sec. I think it's on the fridge.
Which
Yeah,
is,
it's the weirdest thing.
again, not it would be digressing down a whole other path of darkness here, but I mean that kind of stuff to me is always disturbing, that,
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess they're enforcing something that's presumably to protect the environment. I
Yeah,
mean,
they're
I
worried
get
about
all that, but
the they thought the blackworm's soil. There was something going on with California blackworms and their
right.
soil. They didn't want it to contaminate ours because apparently there's
Okay.
fungus and different things in the soil that could like spread. And I was like, I don't know where you think I'm going to put the soil. And I just showed them on the ground, like right outside the door of the gallery. I was like, I just dumped the soil there. I was like, just into the gravel. It rinses away eventually. And they're like, well, we're going to take a sample, and
Well, those
everything
California
turned out fine.
blackworms, they're
They
it's
come
a
in
pretty
water.
yeah, it's a fairly clean product overall. I mean,
Yeah.
they really are. It's a clean product. I mean,
Yeah.
we've been getting those for years and years, and I just don't see any. Uh, that's just that kind of stuff's annoying, and it's so rampant in the
Yeah.
hobby. Um, hang on a second. Now I'll edit this out. The dogs.
It's okay.
My
Keep it
wife's
in.
letting the dogs out, and the dogs start barking like crazy.
Go
Doors
nuts.
slamming. I live down the
Babe,
street
I'm
from the.
working.
I've lived down the street from the fire department too, so I'm good for a couple of fire trucks passing by on any
Yeah.
given podcast.
Well, that's
But
what Tamara's always say. Just let me know when you're filming, because her timing's the worst. Because my phone will start going ding, 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 and she's in and out of here. And I'm like, okay, well, sometimes I don't care. I think
right,
podcasts are fine. I mean, everybody has something going on in their house, and
sure.
I always think it's interesting to hear a little bit of the background noises. Like maybe you heard a voice. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that was his wife, or who was that? And, oh, that's what they sound like. Oh, he's got dogs, and I don't know. Keep it in.
Yeah, right. I've always said, dude, I'm going to edit it out,
Unless
and then in the
unless
final
dogs
thing,
are
I'm like,
illegal
oh,
in Texas.
shit, I forgot to edit that out.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of work to run a podcast. Not only you got to get the guests, you got to set up your equipment, you got to get the time, you got to have the software, and you're paying for all of this. You got to come up with a topic, you got to kind of research it, you got to keep the conversation moving. And then once you're all done and all the hard work is over, now you got to edit it, then you have to upload it, then you have to extract the audio, get it onto iTunes and all these other places. Plus, you have to pay for the hosting to host all that. It's a bit of a nightmare.
And then you got to market it, and then you're chopping up YouTube short. You're chopping the whole thing now and trying to deploy your chopped cuts, and which I'm that's the part I probably am the worst at. But no, you're totally right, man. It's more work than I thought. It's like this happened to me. We had a long conversation on your channel last year, and I was trying to get a YouTube channel going myself, and was did I ever have some big visions for that. And dude, it took no time at all for that to eat me alive. Like it was like, wow, that game is really evolved. And it took me down. I mean, I ended up with something like a cold for like 2 months. I don't get sick, and I got, but I was just grinding so hard to try and keep up. I thought I was going to do it like a side hustle. Yeah. And no, man. I mean, gig. Props to you. It's a full-time thing, and it takes a lot of energy. A lot of this content creator stuff is not easy. It takes a lot of energy.
Oh yeah.
It's
one of the things that I've found, if I'm going to bring my podcast back, because this is the second podcast I've ever done. Like I had one years ago, and I created a mobile app, and I put it on there, and I gave the app away for free. And then I lost interest after about 20 episodes. This one, technology is getting in the way. I'm going against exactly what I've always said, and that is don't let the camera get in your way. So my camera's right here. Sometimes I wear a microphone, sometimes I don't. I break these all the time, which really sucks because they're not cheap. But I'll drop them. I've fallen water, that sort of thing. But I got to get the shot, and I want to make it super simple and easy. And if you let all of the microphones, and it takes so long to set, if you let technology get in the way, by the time you're ready to film, it's exhausting, and there's so much pressure on you.
Yeah.
Because you've spent all this money on equipment, and now you got the shots ready, and then so my suggestion would to try the run and gun style just a little bit. It might not be your style, but try to make videos or whatever you do as easy as possible. So the only way the podcast's coming back, and I've thought about it, I might just film it right here, but these microphones are going to have to be installed into the sides of these tanks and hide away when I'm not using them. And then when I am, they're just going to come out. Cameras, I don't know what I'm going to do, or lights or anything, but everything has to be super easy to do, or I'm not doing it. The other thing is it's only going on YouTube. I'm not putting it anywhere else. Maybe someday I'll upload it to iTunes and Stitcher and all these other podcast websites. But most of the views came from YouTube anyway.
Right.
And Tamara helps with the clips and whatnot and chopping things up. But for the most part, I just don't edit unless I say something I really regret, which could get somebody in trouble that I didn't mean to, or that I really don't want to have to deal with the consequences of saying
Sure.
this.
Yeah.
Which hasn't happened often. I don't think any of my podcasts have really been cut up or chopped up or anything, because
You've had a couple of moments over the years, I know, with the YouTube thing. I remember randomly catching one time, long time ago, but I think it looked as if it was like late at night, and it was just a troll situation. Just somebody. It was kind of
Instagram.
it was kind of a younger guy maybe, and he was just talking crap, and you
Was it a
know,
younger
and
guy with no shirt on?
and you got triggered in some kind of way, and
That
was
that's
were
the way
I
it was
think you might have been
painted.
live streaming or whatever, and just kind of lost it, which is human. It happens to the full blown professionals. Like, that happens from time to time. You're
That's the way
human
those
beings.
videos. That's the way those videos were clipped.
Yeah,
But right before that, I had been live streaming that day for about 7 hours. I was drinking and having fun. Everybody loves my live streams that I was doing during the pandemic. It was like getting
yeah,
to hang out with somebody, and I really
sure.
liked it because I couldn't have friends, and I really wanted to talk to people. And so I was going live. Then I seen a few trolls 7 hours in the comments, and I was like, if you guys want to see what it feels like to be trolled, join me. Request to join. So all these requests, I hit one, and I roasted him really bad,
Yeah,
loaded drunk. But what got clipped out at the end was I said, and I have the full clip. Do you see what it feels like? This is
yeah,
why you shouldn't do this. This
right,
hurts. This hurts feelings. I did my best to say everything I could that could possibly hurt your feelings, that I thought you might be insecure about, and hurt you, just so you can get an idea of what it's like to do that to a complete stranger.
sure.
That got clipped out. Nobody uploaded that part because everything's taken out
Okay.
of context.
Oh, of course.
Um,
It's the very
so
nature of a clip.
so
It's to
I let
clip out
everybody
the
get
good stuff.
I let everybody get their views, and I let them stay up for about, I don't know, 3 to 6 months. Let them get their views, and as soon as they started dying out, I started copyright striking them. This is my content. This is my content. And the reason I do this is because, unfortunately, I knew that kid. I knew him.
Oh,
We
wow.
talk. He was
Okay.
applying for college. He was talking. He's like, man, I really don't want people to see this. Can you get them taken down? I was like, yes. But nobody knows this story. They just think Joey went out of control. Joey
Right.
bullied a kid. And then
Yep.
Joey started copyright striking. They don't know the
Right.
whole story. They don't know that he's in school for biology right now. I know his name. They don't. Every time it's like, oh, remember the time you bullied this kid? It's like, what's his name? What's his name?
Yeah.
I know him. The other thing is, before I did any of that, I set the live stream to be 18 plus. I was drinking. I was smoking cigars.
I remember it. I remember it.
It's
Yeah.
cringy. It's
Yeah.
cringy when I think about it, but
Right.
whatever. And obviously, you should never drink that much and be on video. But I felt like I was safe. And he was like 16 or 17 or something like that at the time. Again, we still talk to this day, off and on. But it's just interesting to see the way people will manipulate and change and clip a story. Of course, it's going to look ridiculous if
Yep.
I'm sitting here screaming at a kid. That is ridiculous looking. But let's
Right.
look at the
If
bigger
that's all you
picture and
see,
what.
you're like, oh my God, this guy's
Yeah,
a loose cannon, and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
dangerous. And
So some people took it
uh,
out of context. Some people were trying to cancel, but a lot of people that were there were like, I didn't even have to say anything. I made a video about it, responding to it, and I was like, I unlisted it on my channel about a year later. I don't need this to be part of my legacy. And then these people going to search up this kid and then trying to bully him or say something to him or harass him while he's, getting into college and trying to build his life. He's going to start fresh. And I just took it on the chin for him. Like,
yeah.
I'll delete or I'll make the video. I'll copyright strike. I looked really bad doing all that, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to explain myself to people that don't want to hear this whole story anyways.
Right.
But in the DMs, if people brought it up, I was like, no, this is actually what happened. Here's the full clip. And they're like, oh, shoot, I didn't know that. I'm like, of course you didn't. You jumped to conclusions.
Right.
I'm so easy to talk to and so easy to get a hold of. But you know what's easier? Free views. And
Right.
trying to cancel somebody. And I didn't get canceled.
Right.
I don't.
But it
I
is a
don't.
thing. I mean, it is a more so now. I think if that would have happened like this week, there's
Yeah.
even more of a internet mob out there on
Hmm.
any damn thing you can come up with, that's outside of the, if there's something that can be construed as controversial or even mildly inappropriate, or any of this stuff,
Hmm.
it's, or if I can, better yet, if I can take something long form
Hmm.
and cut it out of if I can clip 10 seconds out of the long format situation, and now that's so much the way things are consumed. So
Hmm.
I make a clip out of an hour conversation and make a YouTube short and a TikTok and a reel out of it, etc.
Should be making 6 of them every conversation you have, 6 of them. And a little tip, so you don't have to watch it all back, is if you hear something during your podcast, and you're like, "Damn, this is going to make for a good clip," look at the timestamp and write down the time.
Sure. I mean, yeah,
That,
the platform I use has a thing you can actually do that. If you can, you hit the M key, I think, or something on your keyboard, and it kind of it marks it, so it's easy to go back and find.
Wow,
Um,
that's a little
because yeah,
smarter.
because why? Because it's becoming such a thing to,
Yep.
that's how you're going to market it, and you're looking for
Yep.
those little pieces, and just it makes sense. But because of that being so much the way to get, like, I could make a whole channel of just nothing but hit pieces on Joey Mullen, and probably find little moments from your streams and stuff, any
Yep.
little thing you say, and make,
Oh yeah.
which is just, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
And it's
But
been done. It's been done. It's always interesting to watch people take the moral high ground, while they're name calling you, harassing you, not telling the truth, and then call you names. I've always
right.
found that fascinating. So I don't respond to anybody. I don't see the point.
Yeah.
I won't say that I haven't fantasized about it, and I look at them, and then I take a look at their content, and I look at close to their history, and then I can really dig through the internet, and then I find some stuff. I'm like, this doesn't end well for you.
Right.
I'm going to leave you alone, though.
Sure. Sure.
If that's what you need to do, go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's crazy. And
can't be
speaking of
bothered.
lives,
And some people are like, "Oh, you're taking the moral high ground, and you're taking the high ground, and that sort of thing." And I always thought to myself, this doesn't happen in person when I meet people. And I used to think, it's because people are scared or something. That's not it. In person, people are human beings. On the internet, they have zero accountability. There's no accountability
right.
besides having fun trolling or being offended by something and flipping out, and there's absolute no control. When's the last time you were standing side by side someone in an elevator and just flip out at them for
Yeah.
for something they don't even know that you saw?
It's rare. It takes a lot
It's
of things, a
ridiculous.
lot of hormones and chemistry and
Yeah.
and mood needs to come together for that to happen. I've got
Yeah.
there's a guy right now, and I secretly hope he's watching this, but I don't get too many. I haven't had a big troll problem in general over the years.
Mhm.
There's always one or two hanging around. I mean, I don't put too much of my personal self out there, so you get the occasional critique of the work or whatever, but the ones that they're just showing up, just, it's like, man, you're just looking for any damn thing to pick out here. Or then that now this guy's favorite thing now is to say that I don't take criticism well, because if I
Why do you
delete the
have to?
comment,
Why
then I'm a
why is
jerk.
that a saying? Why do you have to take criticism? You know what the definition of criticism is? It's not a positive word. People are like, I should be able to criticize you, and you have to take it nicely. That
Right.
means they have to be able to say all the things they don't like about you and pick it apart, and you got to take it on the chin. Otherwise,
Sure.
you can't take criticism well.
Yeah.
It's
Or I
never
really
made sense to me.
struggle. I
Or it's
struggle
not
with criticism. I'm like,
there's
not
no such thing
really.
as constructive criticism. There's constructive suggestions and conversation and rapport. There's no such thing as constructive. I don't even know why that word exists. Criticism is a weird word to begin with. What is the definition? Anyways, I people hide behind the idea that they're allowed to say whatever they want, tear you apart however they want, and you have to accept it. I don't live that life.
Right.
So sometimes I can come across as a jerk or whatever, but if you say something rude to me and if I'm in a certain mood back,
Right.
I'm going to say something back. And I can assure you, for the most part, I do it mostly on Instagram, but most of my audience loves it. if I say something back, like
Right.
especially in comments, 500 likes on my comment and they'll get 3 plus a bunch of LOLs, that sort of thing.
Because everybody knows
Um,
what they're doing at this point. I'm just, and that's what
yeah,
makes me roll my eyes and go, really? It's like, oh, that's so we. It's just social media. We know, everybody knows. You can roll up and say anything in the
yeah.
comments or whatever. It's like it's just old. I'm just like, it's not. Why on earth would you stop what you're doing to make a comment that someone's tank is, that it's something wrong with it, or it's boring, or it's
Well,
what,
stop
like,
what you're
why,
doing. Is it?
what makes you stop and do, like, I would never ever, even
It's
most of what I'm
interesting
looking at,
because
I'm like, I don't care for that, that's boring, keep the thumb scrolling here, I'm moving along. I don't need to
first and
stop and
foremost,
take time out to park my time on your post and tell you that something's wrong with what you're doing. um it's just a
first and
bizarre, it's a
foremost,
bizarre phenomenon to me.
they want this response. That's what they want.
Yeah,
They want to get a rise out of you. They want to know
I
they've
know.
impacted you or
And
affected you
they
in
do.
some
They get
way.
it. It does get in your head in some kind of way.
It
Just as
does
far.
because you've got, but you can look at it in a couple of ways. If 100 people tell you how great you are, it doesn't really make you feel that good if you've been hearing it all the time. But you hear one person say how bad you are, and you're like, damn, now it's ruined my day. And then you're on the internet typing back, and you're like, nope, I'm going to erase that. And then you're like, screw it, I'll say this, and nope, I'll erase that. And like it does ruin your day. So I've learned, like, I don't care what another grown man thinks about me.
Right.
You don't pay my bills. And I can only imagine what your life has come to if you're scrolling through the vastness of the planet right in the palm of your hand. You can look at anything you want, but you insist on watching something you don't like and then saying something nasty. That has nothing to do with me. I wish
Right.
you nothing but the best moving forward. If there's anything that I can do to actually help coach you or maybe give you some inspiration in terms of fixing what made you so miserable, let me know. Other than that, I keep it moving. I don't care
Yeah.
what you say.
That's wise. That's a mature, wise approach to it.
And if
And
it is just one or two people, delete them and block them.
yeah,
Go away then.
sure.
Here's some help.
I've done that before, and then I feel like, man, I really, did they
Well, it
win?
makes you
Did
feel
they
like you're
win when I
running.
did that? Should I
No,
just?
because when you've done it before, let's say, do you think you did at least one person 6 months ago?
Yeah.
Let's say I did. I don't remember their name.
Right.
You'll never remember them. I can't feel guilty about something. And if I do feel like they are actually trying to add to the conversation, and or maybe they're just wording it differently, because we do have to keep in mind we can't hear their tone, we can't hear their body language, we can't see the way they're making faces or anything like that. And I can say things in a number of ways. I can say, first and foremost, if I type in, uh, I really like your fish tank, Jeff, or I could say it like, I really like your fish, like, and make it sound sarcastic or
Sure.
something. And
Yeah.
then it's different annotation. So maybe it's something like that. Sometimes I try to give the benefit of the doubt if I feel like what they're saying is going to, contribute to what I'm doing. But bottom line is, if you feel so strongly about content on the internet, make a change, do
Yeah.
something about it. Making a nasty comment, attacking people, or making videos about people aren't going to make change. What you can do is pick up a camera and affect change on your own, like I do. Because at one point, I didn't want things to be the way they were in the aquarium hobby. I wasn't a huge fan that all marketing was done through magazines and through the industry. It was very industry driven and controlled. And hobbyists did not have a voice. We were not taken all that serious. We were just looked at as leads and dollar signs. And I was like, I'm going to make a change. And when I started to, I had to deal with all the bullshit stuff in terms of like being made fun of at industry events. Nobody knows who you are. To quote a certain company, nobody even knows who the F you are. Who cares what you say? Stuff like that. Until one day, they won't say anything anymore.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
funny anymore. Now I do have a voice. And now I'm enabling other hobbyists to have a voice. But we have to be careful with it and as responsible as we can for the next generation.
Yeah, I got into a little trouble, early on. Is back when I launched I was trying to do a channel thing last year, which I'm just going to say it again. It flopped. I mean, I didn't have what it takes to make that work at that time anyway. So, I'm one, I pick myself up, dust myself off, and do the next thing. But anyway, I had kind of led with a
Why do you say that it flopped? Just didn't get views?
no, I couldn't. It took almost no time at all for me to not be able to keep it up. I mean, it just,
Oh,
I went really hard out of the gate, and
right.
I hadn't planned things at ADG enough. My daily commitments were not well enough sorted to take on
Right.
something that was going to be more than just a side thing. Uh, so
You got
I've
to kind
actually,
of do it in, maybe if you do pick it up back up, think about doing everything in batches, because if you're trying to do a video from beginning to end in a day or two, or even over the course of a week, and you just get one video, you'll burn out incredibly fast. So one of the
right.
things you might want to consider is one day you're brainstorming, coming up with all the ideas, figuring out what you want to do. Maybe the next day is capturing all the shots, all the B-roll footage that you might need. The third day, of course, is the filming process, the talking that's already scripted, and or you have your notes. And because you've already spent 2 days brainstorming and taking B-roll, when you're taking B-roll, which is just shots of things you're going to talk about, you get ideas of things you want to say, you add them into the notes. So on that third day, when you're finally taking an hour out of your time to make 6 videos, film them all back to back, as it's only going to take an hour. There's no way it's going to take longer than that, maybe 2 hours tops. And on the last day, you film.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good
in 4
workflow.
days, in 4 days, you could have 6 videos done. You put out once a week, or 2 a week. You're set up for a month to, a month and a half potentially. Just got to try to find a better workflow to it, and to organize that time, because sometimes I'll make 12 videos in a week, and I'll have almost nothing to do for 2 months.
Yeah.
That's not the way it really goes. Now I have time to catch up on my personal life, and fix everything around the house that keeps breaking, or get the
Right.
yard work done, or things like that, or pretend my fiance exists and take her on some dates and things like
Right.
that, and spend some quality time with my family and whatnot. But you
And
know
I had time for
uh,
none of that, and
no,
it was just I didn't sort my other existing commitments well enough, and
yeah,
totally my fault. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't even give it a chance to get views and stuff before I was like, oh, but I did see right away that the view thing is, uh, it's a pretty high level game these days. If you're going to get views, you better know what you're. If you care about that, then you better know what you're doing. You better know how to play. You better be marketing, your butt off, um, and
well, I
all of
think
that.
that
So I get it. It's just I was just poorly.
the
I was
worst thing you
naive, and
do
I was ignorant of the actual reality of the process.
the
And
worst thing you could do is worry about the views, and there's a number of ways to think of it. Of course, you want to
I
get
always
a
hear that,
core.
and I'm like, I'm not so sure I believe anybody that says that.
Well,
That is a human brain that wants those views, man.
so
That's
of
no
course it
one.
is. Of course it is. Until you learn until you've been to the top of the mountain.
That's true. I have not been to the top of the mountain, so I cannot
I
relate to
have.
that. Yeah,
I
I
have.
know you have.
I've been the
I know
first
you have.
channel to hit 1 million
I know
subscribers.
you
The
have.
first,
Yep.
I kind of opened the doors for everybody else to show the potential, and I built so many other channels around me. But that's not the point of what I'm saying. Um, the way the internet's set up right now is virality, and fast moving action. Words jumping up on the screen for everything they say.
Yep.
Mr. Beast type things.
Right.
I'm not into that. I can't do that. It's not very educational. There's no real influence in that. Um, but if you were to get 10,000 views on a highly educational video, it's going to prove its value far more longer over the course of time. It is far more influential. There is probably, I don't know how many pet channels and animal channels that are bigger than mine, but for the most part, a lot of people can't name, that are especially in the aquarium hobby, can't name 3 of them, but
Right.
they can name me.
Yeah. It's
So
true.
it comes down to influence. So lots and lots of views equals lots and lots of money, and that's basically it. There's no longevity in it. Good luck staying viral for 15 years. How long do you really want to do this for? Oh, I just want to grab a few bucks and get out. I'm in this for life. This is who I am. And I found that when you are at the top, that is the most stressful and exhausting time. It's also bad for your mental health, because now you can do no wrong. Now you are God. Now you are the greatest at everything. And if you already struggle with those types of issues with yourself, like self-esteem issues, it's going to be horrible, because once you're up there, coming down is nothing but problems mentally.
Yeah.
Nothing but problems.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
so
there's a
do
coming
view,
down for everyone, for the biggest celebrity, there's always an
yeah,
arc to this
there's a peak,
stuff.
of
Pretty soon
course.
you don't show up at the convention thing anymore, or the show, and
Yeah, just kind of fade out.
people are losing their mind that you're there, and like, oh my god, you can feel that energy when you're passing by, and all the
Yeah,
whole, well, all the autographs, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, because we're humans, we got egos, it's a
yeah,
thing. Quit
it's
trying
a
to
great
act like
feeling.
you're
Yeah.
everybody's above I'm above that. I'm not bullshit.
Yeah.
Everybody's in
Everybody
some
loves
kind of
it.
way.
They
We
love it.
all have that element in us.
It's a great feeling. I used to have that imposter syndrome that when I did go to events, I had extreme anxiety. I'm like, guys, if you only knew who I really was. This is before I told my life story. I'm like, I felt like an imposter. Like, you guys think I'm this highly educated, well to do, came from a wealthy family or something. And it couldn't be any further than the truth. Then 2 days before I put out How the Aquarium Hobby Saved My Life, for months I was being extorted and being threatened about
Wow.
my life going to be told and exposed on the internet. So I was like, I'll do it then.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. There you go.
Yeah,
That's a good
and,
move.
and that
It's a
and
good move
that's why I put the
always.
video out. It's always I felt it was better to put all my cards out on the table. Then I could finally move forward. But the benefit of that was that I knew I wasn't wrong. I knew there was lots of people out there just like me, and I thought, what better thing that could I do to celebrate 1 million subscribers is to tell you that I'm not who you think I am.
Right.
I'm more like you than you think.
Right. Sure.
Um, and that video was a massive success. Not in terms of views, it did really well on views, but in terms of like the response it got,
Sure.
and the influence it had throughout the hobby.
Well,
Um,
people, we all crave that,
yeah,
that authenticity. It's part of the reason why
but yeah, I think
YouTube and these other
so.
these channels
Depending on
are popular is because we do feel we get a little closer than what we got growing up with only television. For example, we knew that that was
yeah,
manufactured, and so it's access to the person
yeah,
that is a huge part of the magic. I mean, that just makes total sense. So kind of shifting gears a
but
little
yeah. So
bit.
I mean, depends.
There's one
Yeah,
time.
sure.
There was one topic that I kind of wanted to touch on with you specifically. I feel like if I don't squeeze it in here pretty soon, we'll go on about
You
this.
have to squeeze things in, and
The,
you've got to cut me off because I can keep a certain topic. I can keep anything going for as long as we need to.
sure, absolutely, but and it's just something that I'm always curious about with people that have engaged in the industry, not just the hobby, and just sort of because I feel like, I mean, for me personally, it's a bigger sort of problem out there. I consider it a problem. Man, it's not a great way to look at it, but if you, what is your sort of state of the union in terms of the aquarium industry itself? And do you feel like um, it's doing the right things to get the right products or to meet the demands of not just the hobbyist? Because I feel like hobbyist is pretty well served in general. If you're a hobbyist, that means you've crossed over into a different um, I'm getting some weird. No, that's something else. Sorry. You've crossed over into a different realm with aquariums. To call yourself now a hobbyist is a whole other culture. That's a whole different tribe than just the person that wants to have an aquarium in their space and enjoy a meditative chill out experience with their aquarium. They don't really care about going to they're not going to join a club. They're not, you know, they're not into it at sort of that deeper hobby level. They're not on Facebook groups. They're
Yeah,
not going to Aquashella,
yeah,
this kind of thing. And to me, I guess that's still a kind of an unserved aspect of just people who would love to have an aquarium. I call it the aquarium lover versus the aquarium hobbyist. And
mm,
all hobbyists may be lovers, but not all lovers are hobbyists, is always the way I put
right.
it. And I just wonder if there's a broader sense of influencers and content creators and all that, because everybody wants to grow. I mean, that's always a
Mm-hmm.
thing. No matter, I mean, we want to grow. You speak yourself of like the growth that happened for the awareness you brought to stores when you would go do the store tour. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're back kind of getting grassroots with the clubs again and that kind of thing because of the growth potential there. So growth is part of what we all want to do in some kind of way.
Yeah,
Um, and I'm always curious other people's take who've had you've interfaced with manufacturers at that endorsement and sponsorship level. So you have a little deeper sense of the marketing mind of the aquarium industry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and is it because my perception is that we give lip service to wanting to grow, but what a lot of what I see seems to be trying to do a different version of the same thing, uh, kind of rebranded, whatever, added a couple of features, and we're just going to sell it to the hobby again, which is fine, but that growth element isn't there. And then there's so many people I meet every day with how I do retail, which is different from the typical tropical fish store, where uh, this is not somebody on the path of become the hobbyist is not really even in their mind. Having an aquarium is in the same way I have to make this analogy about having a dog. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Most people that have a dog are not a professional service animal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of ways, and that analogy always resonates with people when they come in because they see it being presented differently and they're like, okay, now wait, this is more what I was after. And I make that analogy and they're like, exactly. In other words, this non-hobbyist still to this day perceives getting into aquariums or aquarium ownership as the equivalent. If they were going to get a dog, they would first need to become a professional dog trainer. Before they would get a dog, they better know a lot about dog training. And I just
Mm-hmm.
don't find that people getting a dog like that sequence doesn't go like that at all. You're not going to go get a rescue animal from a shelter to adopt as your family pet, and your loving companion. Yet you're going to go study. You better know about the hip, respiratory, and skin problems of French bulldogs. It's like, no, you're not getting a French bulldog, and yet you're afraid to go get a rescue animal, or just to go find a mutt in a shelter because you heard about these problems that French bulldogs have. But that is the barrier to entry kind of thing happening when people look at aquarium products, when they look at the marketing. A lot of that's whether it makes sense or not doesn't matter. I mean, this is a day-to-day
Who's
feedback.
what's the regulatory body behind aquarium industry? Who regulates what they can and can't say on packaging, for example?
I don't know because one thing I can assure you is they lie on packaging pretty
Isn't
routinely.
that interesting? Huh,
Yeah.
that's an interesting thought of the day.
Yeah, kind of a
Um,
rhetorical question there I see now.
it's
Um,
interesting. I think the aquarium industry is growing on a consistent basis. A lot of people think it's dying or becoming less popular, et cetera. And I think that just has to do with your own feed on social media. You might not be seeing as much, or your interest might be dying. So you feel as a whole it is, but it is growing year after year at a substantial rate, far
sure.
greater than it ever has before. I think it's interesting that there are fish uh, aquarium lovers and aquarium hobbyists. And of course, I'm an aquarium hobbyist. I loved your analogy there. But to further that, I think that you could think, I have a dog. I'm not in any dog groups. I don't watch dog videos. I don't know anybody that's a dog influencer. I don't know anybody that's in a dog group. Oh, that's a lie. Tamara is. She's a I think she's a dog hobbyist. No, but for the most part, you have a pet dog, and when you have an aquarium, it's more of a it's it's more of an involved hobby. You could have your fish tank, but once it's set up and you're feeding it, you can't get enough. So now you want to go look at other people's stuff. You want to look at what they're doing. You want to talk. You want to share ideas. You want to share your experience and share your things.
It's a good
And you
point.
don't typically do that with a dog because it's more like the dog becomes a family member. Like I don't join groups looking for people that who also have sons, and then we talk about their son, and I talk about my son, and we share
Fair enough.
pictures.
Yeah,
Not on the type of internet that I go on anyway, but
right.
you get the idea. I think
And
that
that's a good point.
I think this is just all interesting. When it comes to marketing within the hobby, I think that I would go as far as say like 90% of companies out there have no clue what they're doing, and there's all the top brands standing out. Um, and they've all embraced social media to a certain extent. I'm not saying that's just what they have to do, um, but I think that for the longest time, I didn't understand their budgeting and their marketing because they'll pay $2,000 to $5,000 to get a couple page spread in a magazine, or they'll spend $40,000 $50,000 to attend an event. But when it comes to aquarium hobbyists and people that are, promoting and having a real impact on your bottom line and sales, well, here's a free filter. They don't pay them. They don't put any money towards that. So I noticed that a long time ago, and I effectively started making a change. Now, I've dropped sponsors recently. I told them to kick bricks. I've never lost a sponsor. Just recently saying, I'm done with you. Simply because they're mad that I told anybody that I get paid for certain things, or I'm paid to go to events and stuff. So I was like, well, now you've pissed me off. You're mad that I told anybody because you don't want to pay anybody else. That's all that is. Otherwise, it's my business. I could say whatever I want to whoever I want. You're just mad because you don't want to have to pay anybody else.
Sure.
So be it.
Well, it's not a thing that historically there was no track record of that. There was no history of, the endorsement side was just never a thing for so long.
It's existed forever. Existed forever. Do you think Michael Jordan did Nike for free? Do you think LeBron does Reebok or whatever he does for free?
Just Aquarium. Aquarium had never really made much of a thing out of that. Do you remember in the magazines, back in the day when that's all there was, there'd always be some expert cichlid guy or something might be endorsing. They would use him in the ad for some filter media additive or something like I remember seeing that stuff like that, but it was never anybody that I was like, who's this guy? Or this is Bob from Bob's Tropical in Muskogee. Says this is the greatest filter pad. You're like, okay, who cares?
I never understood it because they are paying big money to go into these magazines and get to these advertisements for what? 5,000 customers to maybe turn to page 52 and ingest your ad, maybe? Or you're paying $40,000, $50,000 to go to these big events, which I don't know what your ROI is, but I know if they have 5,000 people, 5,000 aren't stopping by your booth. But if I were to invest in a creator that's trusted, like if I were to pay you to promote something from me, I know you have influence, you're going to have bottom dollar line, and it's just way more bang for the buck. What I'm doing is trying to fight for newer creators that are selling their souls for free product.
Yeah.
Will it get worse if you're getting paid? No, you'll be able to be more picky. What I suggest every creator does that is trying to be sponsored is buy the products yourself that you really want and do your reviews or do your unboxings or do it because you love it and you actually believe in it and you've proven it because you're willing to buy it.
Yeah.
Then you have a portfolio of videos you could send to a sponsor. This is how I do my reviews. This is how I do all mine. If you want to get involved, you could send a pitch or whatever. But for me, I don't really do those types of unboxings or anything. Sometimes I do, but for the most part, I don't. So I don't sign any contracts. I'm not bragging or anything, but I do not do contracts. I'm not saying anything you want me to say. I can stop this at any point that I want to. At best, it's going to be product placement. People will see me using it. It's one thing to make a 3-minute commercial. It's another thing to be like, man, what kind of food is he feeding? Look at his fish. Or what is that additive or that product that he's actually using on the tank that he loves the most? Why? What is that? Then people want to use it. They're not going to go like, huh.
That is great advice, man. That's
how I do my marketing. Yeah, like it's just, you could do product placement. You could do all kinds of things. But if you want me to sit there and be like, hi, this winter we have the winter edition Blue Bull. Red Bull. Blue Bull.
Right.
Blue Bull. I hate those commercials because then I'm like, not only did you probably statistically not get paid for that, you probably only got it for free and you're selling your soul for that. So I can't even trust your integrity.
Right.
Or if they stand to benefit, you have to be completely blunt and honest right from the jump. I always say I got this for free. These guys support the gallery. I've never had a sponsored video, so I've never had to claim a video as being sponsored. The gallery is what gets sponsored.
Okay.
Not my videos, because you're not buying my videos.
Right.
You cannot buy my videos. You can't buy placement or anything like that. But what you can do is you could sponsor the end result, which as I'm trying to do, keep the lights on, or I need salt, or things like that. If you can help me get to my end result, then you could be in the videos inadvertently.
Right. Do you have any kind of Patreon or any kind of that kind of crowd?
Yeah, I do my OnlyFans. I do my OnlyFans.
That's
so
right. That's right. The OnlyFans.
Yeah, it's my little subscription
really
service.
By the way, yeah,
I didn't pick it. They did. I was like, guys, come up with some names, and we'll do a poll. So all the members of the channel listed off like a bunch of hilarious names. and I demand that of them. Like, can we at least make it funny? So somebody said OnlyFins, and that was one of their top ones. So I took all these like 6 options, and they picked it. But to put things into perspective, custom aquariums, that's more of a household name these days, but nobody knew who they were at one point. Um, they sent me 10 fish tanks, never paid me a penny. But a year after they sent me these 10 fish tanks, Adam, the owner of the company, I still have the text message, said, Joey, I don't know if we can attribute to this to just you, but since we've dealt with you and since we've been working with you, our business has literally doubled. Joey, you're creating jobs. I was like, damn, I had no clue the influence and I had no clue of anything. And then I just responded, I should have charged you. I wonder how much money I would have made.
Right?
I could have made millions.
Seriously.
But, or aquadecorbackgrounds.com. Nobody really knew who they were. They haven't paid me a penny.
Those
but
guys
they
are
send me
good,
cool
man.
stuff.
They're so
yeah,
good.
They're
so
too good. If you see anything in person, you're gonna be upset because you create these things at a natural materials and make them look absolutely so stunning and beautiful, and then they're like, here's the same thing on, and it just pisses me off because I'm like, I have no artistic, I could never do this.
Yeah.
But it is expensive, but it is worth it. They last forever. The ones that I don't use are stored outside, and literally just outside, right beside my shed. They're not covered or anything like that because they don't need to be. So they freeze and they thaw and they get covered in snow and ice and water, and nothing happens to them.
Wow. Yeah.
I keep using them
It
year
looks
after
like a
year.
great product, and they're
Yeah.
just, they understand kind of the
What's an
composition and the
example?
balance. I've been wanting to collab with those guys forever.
Well, they haven't paid because they didn't need to. They're just sending me all this cool stuff. I was like, I value this more than I value the paycheck. There has been companies that have paid me lots of money, but just for example, I do take free stuff too sometimes if it helps me get to the end result, because
Sure.
I was gonna buy it anyway.
I think for what you do too, a lot of your aquarium, just the style, the kind of fish you're keeping, etc. Something like that aqua decor product is really cool. Like that is a classy, viable way of doing decor that is not real rocks and all of that. That really you know it just works. Man, I'm
Yeah,
really, that's a company I really admire. I've actually want to have them on the podcast at some point. Somebody from
they
there.
will.
But
I
yeah,
can give you their contact information.
yeah. Just that. Just
Yeah, they're
it's just
good.
a good. It's a good product that is feeling. I love to see
They're good
action.
people. Oh,
Yeah.
Ecotech too. Ecotech sent me a bunch of stuff, but they also paid me. They gave me like $5,000. They met me one day. Jake Adams set it up. I was speaking at Reef Builders in Denver, Colorado, or not at Reef Stock in Denver, Colorado years ago, and the gallery hadn't even really been announced yet. And he knew, he's like, bro, we got to get you some help. I have a tremendous amount of contacts in the industry, and there's a company that wants to talk to you. It's Ecotech, and I was like, I don't even know who that is. He's like, they do the best lights, pumps, that sort of thing. I was like, oh, okay, that might make sense. So we sat down and I told them what I was doing. His name's the guy I spoke was Jay Espernito or something
Yeah.
like that.
Jay,
I can never pronounce.
guy.
Yeah, I can never pronounce his last name. Very laid back, very cool.
Yep.
He didn't want numbers, stats, or anything. He's just like, what are you doing? What is the end result here? What's the goal? Just build your fish room? I was like, no. The idea is to build aquariums from all over the world, different aspects, to try to inspire and educate on different aspects of the hobby in different locations. The overall goal, of course, is to grow the hobby. And he's like, what do you need? I was like, well, I guess I could use some, filter, some pumps and lights and stuff. He's like, do you need any money? I was like, I do got to upgrade the electrical. That's going to be $5,000. He's like, okay, that's it. That's all we need to know. We want to help. We don't care what you do. We just want to be involved with this.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And it was, I was like, I shouldn't even accept money, because if a company is truly not only a fan, but their heart is aligned with mine and they have the integrity and they want the end result that I do, I'm doing it for free.
Yeah.
And
but
it
hey,
is what it is.
a man's gotta eat too here. In
oh, you got to eat. I mean, and it does get expensive, and to make the videos and whatnot. And
right.
and that,
you're bringing
that sort of
value
thing.
though. You're bringing value, and that's at the end of the day, that's the takeaway, and that's what matters. And it's worth it. So. So no, I get it. I think you have a overall, you're an optimist in terms of the industry, where things are going, the growth, that sort of stuff. And I think
I
that
think
that's
so. I do. I also think that we need some big mouths. I think that that there should be some intimidating people in the industry, and I don't mean like physically scared of them, but that person speaks their mind. That
right.
person is a real individual, and if something is wrong, they're going to say something about it. I think
Yeah,
that is
I, I
incredibly
I
important.
put my pinky toe in that pool, and I did so. I didn't really go about it in the right way. I was really impulsive about it,
Yeah.
and that is I could not agree with anything more than that.
Yeah.
But it does have to be done kind of in the right way. And two, we're in the cancel culture era where you'll what happens with some of the brands have very effectively given a free thing to every person with 20 subscribers on a YouTube channel, such
Hmm.
that now they've really kind of mobilized their little, quasi affiliate thing out there where um, you'll be attacked pretty good pretty quick. They've got a sufficient number of people out there to kind of bite back when you do that, and then it becomes this thing where there's just too much back and forth, where it just becomes this long comments thing, and you know everything you say they're coming back and saying, well, what about this, what about, I mean, I had people trying to shut me down on things like the reason the filter that I was criticizing was not flowing like it says it does on the box was
Which
because
filter was it?
this was a Owaza. I had a famous thing with them,
I haven't had them.
that because
I did the same thing to Fluval FX6s.
I
I
had
said
them sort
that.
of in my crosshairs for some kind of reason, and you know,
Well,
and I got
it's the
triggered one day and started posting things, and I
not
wasn't
just them.
methodical about it.
It's the marketing in general, and a lot of the times you have to say something. Um, oh, the lights came on. I saw the door open. Um, but yeah, I guess like one of the things that if you do criticize, not necessarily criticize, but if you do share your opinion, and it is probably going to be negative, that you do have to be pretty elegant about it. But then you
Sure,
also have to almost own that type of persona because people might expect you to talk like that
that's
again.
just
But
it. Then you
I've done it
become
with
that
the
guy, and that can be tricky to navigate if you don't want to fully just be that guy, because that's a label you're going to get. That's what you'll be remembered for.
not really, and here's why. When I made, and I don't have anything against Fluval, but I made a video, like a full feature YouTube video, and I think it did like 300,000 views. Like this was seen by a lot of people of their FX6. I use them to this day, but that video was to talk about aquarium marketing. The FX6 is rated for up to a 400-gallon tank. It does 925 gallons an hour. No, it doesn't. It doesn't do any of that.
Uh, Thank you. None of them do.
It,
They all have nonsense on the
none of them do.
box. None
The
of them do.
only so you read the actual owner's manual, and I'm glad they put that at that. It says 925 gallons an hour at zero head. The average person doesn't know what that means.
No,
They see that
it
this
doesn't
does
help anybody.
925 gallons. Yeah, once you connect the hoses and you're pumping it up 3 or 4 feet, you got the sponge in there. You've got all the filtration media. Then it's clogging over time. I mean, even if it's brand new, we're still looking at what 650, 600 gallons an hour, something like 650, something like that. The only filter that I think is accurate for their marketing terms of sizing is not their newer ones because they're getting a little bit too flashy, but Eheim. They're Eheim
Mm-hmm.
classic filters, so the round canisters.
Yep.
That is just a
Yep.
bucket.
Thank you.
I believe
Thank
that
you.
supports a nice volume of fish. The
I am
pump,
so
I don't
tired of
know.
this. Yeah, the square tray. I'm just, who came up with that?
Yeah,
It sucks. I just don't know who. I don't
well,
know why
what
all
is one
filters
of
have this stupid square
I do.
tray, and
I know.
they don't even
Eheim
make
doesn't.
they don't even
Eheim
make a
doesn't care.
proper bag to go in the tray. And so if you're putting your own media in there and it has to be in a bag, you're not utilizing the whole area. You've got kind of this 90-degree problem. You've got this hole
If
coming up through the sides. It's just I'm just kind
what
of
does a
going,
car dealer? What does a car dealership make most of their money from? Do you think it's from selling the cars, or does
from
every car
service.
dealership have a service area?
Mm-hmm.
That's where they're making their money. Same with canister filters that have their own proprietary media. They want you to replace that carbon pad and that filter floss pad and this and that and the other thing. Even their biological media is recommended to change every 6 months. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm using the same biological ceramic media for the last 8 years.
Oh yeah,
It's
that stuff
fine.
should go on and on and on. And the
No,
best
it's just
ones, I want to put my own thing in there, and that's where I had the biggest pushback on the videos showing the anemic flow of some of the Awaza filters. Anemic flow relative to the size tank it said it could handle. That's all.
Hmm.
I'm just saying, no, you're
Yeah,
good. You should know, especially newcomer. You
yeah.
should know that what's on the box is just wrong. I don't know I don't know why they put that there, but please, I'm trying to help you realize that you need to level up or go up a model or two.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're the most essential thing, the heart of your aquarium, in terms of the system, is going to be compromised, and there's going to be a cascade of problems that's going to follow. And so, it was an attempt to start to put that narrative out there that they're all putting the wrong numbers on the box. And
Well,
you
it's
need to know,
interesting
because
that you
what do
got.
I deal with, Joey, is people coming in all the time with problems with their tank. And these are fundamental questions: what filter you have, etc. And they've either
Mhm.
got the 75-gallon with the hang on the back, which is just generally problematic most of the time anyway, or they have a canister and it's two models too small. And yet, when they bought it, because they didn't go in and talk to somebody who could tell them otherwise, or they just bought it on Amazon or whatever and they went off the specs.
So
And
what would you think is a solution for that in terms of, okay, we can back up with factual information that the marketing is bullshit.
yeah,
But what is a solution? Would you
yeah,
believe that it's safe to say that if you were going to buy a canister filter, whatever the rating is, divided by two?
sure.
That's what
Or
I say. Divided
do
by two. You're safer that way.
what I like about ADA's marketing with a canister filter, which is micro, like just so tiny. And I'm talking about ADA. I'm talking about a stainless steel filter. This is not a significant player in the market. I get it. I'm not
Mhm.
suggesting even that it should be, but they've never put a this filter can handle this size tank, because the filter was more inherently paired to a dimension of tank that they make. So you knew that a 60 centimeter tank took a Superjet 600, or then later they started doing the 300 would fit that. In other words, they took that part away. Well, I get it. And a canister filter manufacturer, international brand, they're trying to make filters for aquariums. They're not as specifically targeted to a specific thing like an ADA product is. So to me, just forget all of this what size tank it can handle stuff. And your marketing narrative needs to just be different. It needs to be something that says, we use this on these size tanks. Don't leave it up to me to decide, and don't try and make it look
Well,
like it's more
I think
powerful. It's
I think
actually
we
real simple. It's like, just take away the false information, because
we
experts
can know
are telling you it
we
doesn't
know
work.
that, but we know that. Imagine when you first got into the hobby and you're like, okay, what size fish tank do I need for this fish? What size So you got to have some sort of a guide. I get kind of why they do it. I get that they're like, this is good for up to this sized aquarium and it does this amount of flow and it holds this amount of media and it kind of guides as a general guide. But I just think, in my perspective, I can see your perspective in it being like, take it completely away, because it depends and it's incredibly variable. Mine is, I think that they are overrated in
Sure.
general, and it's very flashy marketing that I
Yep.
just don't think is accurate at all. But I also don't think it's regulated by anybody. I have no clue who would do that. I do know that there's organizations that do regulate certain markets within every industry, but I've never heard of one or even been talked about in the aquarium industry outside of livestock sales.
Right. The livestock thing in the U.S. becomes kind of, in my view, a little over regulated. There's so many nonsensical things in there that once they're written into the legislation cannot be reversed. It's just as if it's there, we're done. We're never going to get that reversed. Whereas, yeah, then on the product side, you've got it's still the Wild West in terms of what they can say on there. There is the number of products that have come out that claim to be some kind of it eats sludge. The sludge consuming clear
Mm-hmm.
liquid in a bottle is just
I
it's
see
become
them.
rampant, and
A
I'm
lot
kind
of
of
them are
going,
coming out of a lot of them come out of China and they use my videos and my image, and there's nothing I could do because it's China.
really? Okay,
They
interesting.
could do whatever they want. They don't answer
Yeah.
to anybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's
so
a
yeah,
bunch of those products out there, and I mean, I always I still fall victim sometimes to what's the product description, and I'm like, well, if this does
because
half
we
what it's
fall
claiming, it's going to be amazing. I should try it out. And
exactly
I'm
we
like,
fall in love with the description, and
even
then we realize it doesn't happen.
even really established, venerable, big brands
Mm-hmm.
have those products, and I'm like, dude, this doesn't do anything. It doesn't do one thing. That it's not eating slow. It's not devouring the fish waste. It's not. None of that is happening. It's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sort of going, okay. I mean, what I'm pointing to is the unregulated side of what's put on there. And that doesn't mean they
Yeah.
all don't work. It means that some do, some don't. It's hard to tell. And the
Well,
product
that's why I've
redundancy
kicks.
is makes people crazy too. How many different versions of the same thing are available, and they don't. These are barrier to entry problems for me. Um, in that people are
Well,
they're overwhelmed.
they'll lose their trust over time, and I think that there's been some companies that I've dealt with that their names were so reputable and they're so big that I was like, yeah, you seem pretty safe, and I mean, like, I do use some of those things, I guess. So I mean, send me a bunch of. Then I realized, like, this isn't doing what you said it was going to do. And
Right,
I don't even bother using this because it's next to essentially being useful. And I have no clue what's in that, but I'm pretty sure it's just water and then maybe some sort of a stinky solution. And so you and I are done. I don't want to do any of this anymore. And it
right,
sucks because, when American money's, translated over to Canadian, and you're like, I want to maintain my integrity and trust with my audience more than I want that $20,000 check. And that's a recent thing, and those are recent real numbers. I was like, nope, I'm done.
yeah,
That's it.
sure,
Because I mean, and I think that's why I've been around for so long. Because all I got to do is screw up once in terms of like advocating the using the wrong product. That's why I feel so strongly. If I say I use it, I stand behind it, and I challenge anybody to, let's have a discussion or a debate on why it's wrong or why it's bad. Because I'm definitely willing to do that. Because outside of making videos, outside of doing these types of things, I do like to think that I know what I'm talking about, or at least I do have tremendous amount of experience in the fields that I do, and I wouldn't get on camera otherwise if I didn't.
right,
I A lot of the times, unfortunately, I run and gun. So I'll grab my camera and I'll just start filming unscripted, no notes, nothing like that. And I'm like, damn, I probably should have set the shots up a little bit better. But then I start feeling like, man, this is coming across like I'm Googling the information, stopping the video, Google the information, say it,
sure,
stop the video. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Then your mind just starts playing on yourself and whatnot. But I think that you have to keep saying something for things to change and take effect. It starts off with a ripple. I said something about the FX6. I still use them. I went and bought 4 of them a couple months ago, and they're on video. But a year prior, it came across as if I was against them, and that wasn't the video that was being made. It was just talking about that the canister filters are overrated, that the marketing is ridiculous, that you should know how to do this yourself, and most people don't. So here's how to do it. So that's kind of the essence of that video. But the marketing never changed. Nothing ever happened, and
No, it didn't.
did what I could do. Yeah.
Right. Oh man, I know
So
the feeling. I know the feeling. Well,
yeah.
man,
So all I could do is educate properly and not use things I certainly don't believe in, and
yes,
that's the best anybody could do.
yes, and
Um,
that's a takeaway from this conversation, man, and that's why you're still around today after all these years. And in many ways, I circled back and was looking through some of your more recent content on the YouTube channel, etc. I'm like, damn, all right, Joey's still out there getting it. I mean, a lot of big numbers on the views, and still out. And
it's
it's,
hard.
but it's it is, man. But it's out
I
there
haven't.
with
I don't think the videos are hard. I think it's hard to stay consistent after this long. There's something called the algorithm. It doesn't matter how great your videos are.
sure,
If you're not consistently uploading the videos, YouTube's not going to promote or put you in the recommended or even push it out to subscribers. A
right,
lot of it has to do with like, are they clicking the video? Are they watching the video? How long are they watching? What did they do next? There's so many different things that go into how it gets ranked in the algorithm. But
yeah,
number one is stay consistent. And recently, you know, it's not on purpose. It's just keeps happening. But like sometimes I've only been making 2-3 videos a month. Your subscribers forget about you. There's so much going on in their lives, and they have other things to do than
yeah,
to remember. Like, oh yeah, remember that guy up in Canada? Let's see what he's doing. And then they're like, oh well, he's not making a video, and there's no videos, and they're like, oh maybe he doesn't make videos anymore, and they just forget. And the
sure.
algorithm chews you up and spits you out. So I mean, I'm not doing the views I used to, but it's so much better because it feels like I'm back to like making videos for a bunch of friends.
There you
And a
go.
smaller community, and I'm
There
starting
you
to
go.
remember people's names in the comments again, and
That's
it's a
where the
better feeling.
longevity lies. That's where the longevity lies, in my
Yeah,
view, is in that's a what you just described is sounds sustainable and more meaningful. You know, as a connect,
yeah.
the connection there. The cream rises to the top as the dust settles, and yeah, I think it's really cool, man. But
Well, because at one point, when at the peak of what I was doing in 2017, 2018, and I'm not talking small numbers. These are like 40,000 subscribers a month, 10 million views a month type thing, just blowing up. But that's all everybody was talking about. Look
sure,
how fast Joey's growing. His channel's exploding. And blah, 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 blah. And nobody was talking to, no other creators. Nothing was even talking about my fish. Jake
what a good
Adams
point.
used to. That's all he would talk about. But it just, and now it's kind of back to like, man, you're doing really, that's a cool fish tank. And now I can see
Right.
the comments again. And now it's just it's more enjoyable experience rather than the number chasing. So when I said earlier about, numbers aren't that important, I think that I was a little biased because I've been to the top and I felt started at the bottom, and now I'm kind of leveling out and kind of got a feel for a little bit of everything. Um,
No,
and,
that's full
and if you
circle,
want,
man. Yeah,
yeah, if you want to be happy and if you want to do this for a long time, do it for the right reasons. Keep your heart pure and maintain your integrity.
I love it, man.
That's it.
Well, Joey, this has been a great conversation, brother. Really
Absolutely.
cool. Went a little longer than I had planned, which is awesome. Which is I'm thrilled at that. I love
It
when
is
that
what it is.
happens. Actually,
I had 20 questions for you that I should have asked. That probably would have brought a little bit more value to some of like newer hobbyists, but maybe we'll do them another time.
yeah. Or
Unless you want to answer them, I'm
yeah.
good.
No, let's go
Well,
for
you
it.
got a real day. You
We
got a
should-
normal day. I'm just this Canadian kid sitting on a couch, so I got a few minutes,
right. No,
and my kids don't get home for about 30 minutes.
let's fire a few through a few of them. Why not?
Okay, so I'm going to need you to be relatively quick with a few of these,
All
and I
right.
want you to explain them to me like I don't have much experience in the hobby. So
Okay.
no massive explanation. So when it comes to the planet aquariums, we're looking at a few things: one, substrate, CO2, lighting, nutrients, and then the plants themselves. And I'm just going to have a few questions on each. When it comes to substrate, when does it absolutely matter?
Um, when does the substrate, well, like the substrate choice, or what's the
When do you
context of the
really have
question?
to take it into consideration? So, do all
Substrate. I
plants
get. I
need
get
an
it. I get it. Yeah. Right. There we go. So there's two distinct approaches that relate specifically to substrate. One would be I want to use a soil substrate when I want plants that are rooted in a soil. If they're going to be rooted in the substrate, then it's it's the thing to do. It's essential, right? Uh, the other style is there is no soil, and we're just going to use plants attached to the hardscape. And I love that, especially for beginners, because those plants are just lower metabolism, slower growing. We can use less light, less fertilizer, less opportunity for algae to creep in. And then we want just a cosmetic cover over the glass bottom of the tank. You know, a little bit of sand, a little bit of gravel, whatever you're going to use, because nothing is going to be rooted in the substrate. So that's when
So,
it matters is when I and then two, I say if you don't have CO2, if you're not going to have CO2, don't use soil. That's just doesn't mean you can't, and doesn't mean there's not a thing there. I'm just saying, particularly again, you said calibrated for the newcomer. I avoid using a soil
yep.
substrate if I'm going to do no CO2.
Okay, so even if you are okay, so could I use basic gravel or some sort of non-targeted planted soil
Sure,
for plants?
you can.
That's fine,
Right.
but don't use CO2
Well, then if you're
when you
gonna
do that.
then if you're gonna have plants rooting in the substrate, whether it's gravel or soil or whatever, just
Mhm.
know that when you use gravel or sand, when you use let's just say a non-soil substrate to put plants into,
Right.
whether you have CO2 or not, which again, I wouldn't do that if I was seeking a really predictable outcome. Okay. I just wouldn't, I'm going to use soil and CO2 if I'm not going to use CO2, I skip the soil and I don't even put plants that root in a substrate at all. I'm going to do a hardscape and I'm going to attach plants to the hardscape, Anubias, Bucephalandra ferns, etc. And the reason
Hmm.
I choose that is for, again, my obsession with a predictable outcome. So the minute you take soil out of the equation and you're using aquarium gravel, yes, over time, CO2 or not, if you made the right plant choices, right? Some plants are never really going to do well
Yeah.
without CO2. Irrespective of that point, over time, every gravel will become effectively like the soil, and for the most part, it's going to build up organics and detritus and the mulm and everything else that's going to turn it into what soil is offering you on the first day. Okay, so that's the difference. For years and years, there was no soil substrate. Mr. Amano came up with that. Uh, in fact, if you go back to his Nature Aquarium World, his famous book one, there is no
Hmm.
soil. It's all gravel. And he might use a porous material under the gravel for some additional microorganism surface area. Okay, but
And then he would
uh,
just dose the tank.
then he's just dosing the tank. But even those took a longer amount of time. And where they got real tricky was when they were first started up. When you first start to tank, the first 30, 60, 90 days was very unpredictable. And Amano learned that that's where, especially the newcomer, that's where they got into trouble, was getting everything stable. So the point of soil
Hmm.
was in conjunction with CO2, which he had was already using before soil. He had CO2. Its advantage was obvious, but the soil was just designed to give you that 2-year old gravel planted tank substrate on the
Right
first
away.
day. And that came at a cost,
Ah,
though. That came at a cost
yeah.
because it was full
It
of new
does. Yeah.
nutrients and the plants aren't absorbing
Yep.
anything yet. So that's
Right.
why there's all this water changing. There's an ammonia spike. We wait
Ah,
some time.
so in a regular gravel sand substrate, we're not using CO2 because there's not enough nutrients for the plants to sustain life. They're just probably going to die off.
You're
CO2
probably it's
overdosing.
not so much that, and this is the problem with it, is that that's why my focus and obsession with how I try to teach people to do things is on a predictable outcome. And it's my problem with a
Hmm.
lot of the content that I see on YouTube, etc., that is someone showing kind of their way of doing it that's not going to
Oh,
scale very well. See, it's not going to scale
right.
to what you're doing. They're in Germany, you're in Arizona, and you're dealing
Right.
with highly different variables, but you're just seeing
Right.
someone doing something that looks like it's going well. And so you try to do it
Yeah.
too. And I'm going, oh no, person in Arizona, I've been there and done that already. And the problem with
That
what you're
doesn't work.
doing is it may or may not work. And I
Right.
want people to have a formula that is replicatable, that they can have a predictable outcome. And so all this all over the map stuff about, oh, do it, oh, you don't need that, is it's just not centralized enough. And so people end up trying things that are too specific to the resources of where the person is that made the content or how they're doing it. And so I focus, that's why I just go ahead and say, if you're using soil, you want to have CO2. Those two
Yeah.
were, soil had no place, but CO2 came first. And then Mr. Mono said, well, let me solve the next problem, and then came the soil. And so the two together formed the basis for something called aquascaping. And
Yeah.
aquascaping is not a fish tank with a plant in it. There's not a Java
Yeah.
fern jammed in the hole of a rock. It's a scene of it's a composition of aquatic plants, and we want to bring that scene into form together. So we need to normalize and
Hmm.
optimize the conditions as much as possible to have them growing together into a coherent scene. Not like, well, I'm going to put some plants over here later. And in a couple of months, I might get some from the guy at the club who's got this one I wanted, and I'll jam it over there. That's all fine too. But what's driving where the action is in freshwater is aquascaping. And that's a
Hmm.
specific type of aquarium keeping that has its roots in a very tight formula. And the formula has gone, like everything aquarium, in my view, has gone off the rails. It's just gone off the rails. Every guy is trying to beat the system, do their thing, do their way, make a DIY, this and that. And they're putting a video up because it worked once. And
Hmm.
people are coming to me every
Right.
single day, totally confused by all of that.
So substrate's important depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So uh, if you're going to do, if you're stuck on doing gravel, you probably shouldn't use CO2 because the outcome is typically predictably not going to work. Whereas if you use a soil, you probably should use CO2 because,
Yes.
again, the outcomes are predictable. So that leads me into my next question, and it's still on substrate. And I only want a name. What is hands down the best planted aquarium substrate or soil, in your opinion, in
Yeah.
the hobby, based off experience?
Yeah. ADA, Aqua Design
That's what I thought.
Amano,
Yeah. It is
Amazonia. I
good.
guess now
I've
it's
never had
Amazonia
my,
too. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's how I grow my when I want a carpet plant, there's nothing else that works with
Right.
CO2. I gotta have CO2.
Right.
What's the best substitute if you can't afford that? Because that is expensive.
Sure. I think after that, it's any soil substrate is fine.
Okay.
Literally any.
Then okay, any brand except for some of them are just well, that's probably even a longer conversation, but we'll go into CO2's next that I want to talk about. Everybody can get their hands on CO2, whether it's do it yourself or you know, or they're, fire hydrant, a fire extinguisher, or they get the CO2 tank. The most difficult part about that is regulating it and making sure you're getting enough. So what's the best way to regulate it? And I don't mean in terms of the valves and whatnot. Should we be using a drop checker, or how do you measure that you're getting enough CO2 to the tank?
Right. So I have found that to just really super not matter that much. If you could literally eliminate the am I doing enough or too little by just using the bubble counter that's included on almost every modern regulator
Right.
has a bubble counter that's commonplace now. And even on a bigger
Do you,
tank, if you're at the 1 or 2 per second, I mean, you just need someone to go, yeah, just look at it. And if you're getting about 1 to 2 bubbles per second, I find that covers your bases on a huge spectrum of tank sizes and planting styles. So
when does 1 to 2 bubbles per second start
yeah,
in terms
so
of what size tank?
yeah,
50 gallons, 70 gallons, something
You
like
know, the
that?
odd thing is, and this is just years and years of observation doing every size tank you can imagine. And it's why I don't mean to dumb it down. And I think there's a place for testing or a drop checker or doing other things to monitor. But if you didn't go that far, and I don't, it's one thing I very seldom pay attention to. And it's an area I just don't see problems. Uh, but just I might have it going bubble, 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 1 per second ish on a 10-gallon tank up to a 50-gallon tank or so.
Right.
When it's new, I'm just getting some CO2 in
Right.
there, and
So you're very hands on. You
I'm
watch the
hands on
aquarium, you
because
watch the
yeah,
plants. Yeah.
it was always
It's
that's
kind
kind of
of
the way I
like
learned it from ADA. That was the ADA way. It was
right.
there wasn't a lot of specific testing and kind of monitoring of
Well, I
CO2.
thought what I was going to do with I'm starting up supplanted tanks again using CO2, and I thought what I was going to be doing was dangerous, and I wasn't going to measure everything, and I was probably going to go on the bubbles per second method, making sure it shuts off before the lights and whatnot. But I thought let's just start off with a little bit of CO2, see what happens. 1 to 2 bubbles per second. I'm really glad you said that. And if I need a little bit more, I can go up a little bit more. Obviously,
Totally.
I don't want to start off too much, but yeah. So
After 30
that's a
days. After 30 days,
yeah.
you got way more latitude.
Okay. Yeah, because what's the worst that's going to happen? In those 30 days, the plants are going to die because they're not getting enough CO2. You might get some algae and whatnot, but then you can tweak. That's kind of what I do with like when I couldn't tell you what the hardness and pH of my water is. I could tell you what it was when I moved in. I don't measure those things because humans have the ability and the need to tweak and to mess with things.
Right.
Oh, my discus need a pH of 6. Oh, the water is 7.5. Okay, pH up, pH down, and they keep messing with things. Stability is far more important than
Exactly.
constantly fluctuating. So that's fantastic, and that kind of
Hardness matters.
summarizes.
With aquascaping. Hardness your KH and GH values they're relevant. The good news is you've got a pretty good range of flexibility,
Mhm.
but I dismissed those two numbers and didn't pay attention to them well enough for a lot of years, and I've suffered because of it. So
Right.
once I got a handle on that, things dramatically improved. And so the good news
Would you
is
rather have soft water or hard water?
I mean, for aquascaping, you want it, most of the plants are going to do better in what we would call softer water,
Yeah.
and that's why
I,
again, my formula for aquascaping mandates RO water that's been remineralized, unless I live in one of these rare areas of the U.S. that just has really nice tap water, which is just unusual and certainly not something I have access to here in Texas. So, a GH boosted, properly GH boosted RO water is a massive, massive help in getting any aquascape, just up and running faster, more stable, less algae, all of that stuff. And then there's just a consistency. It's like any aquarium, Joey. The consistency and stability, like you said, is
hmm.
generally the most prized thing over hitting a specific number.
So to summarize the CO2, if you're going to do it, start with injecting 1 to 2 bubbles per second for the first month.
Yep.
Start tweaking after that.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can crank it
Um,
pretty good once you see the plants actively photosynthesizing. You're in the sweet spot. So lights have been on a few hours. You're getting the little bubbles, a little purling happening on the leaves. There, you got your lights at a nice intensity. You got enough CO2 that they can actively respirate. Then you're good. I almost never touch it after that point.
so the bubbles per second is pretty reliable, but it shouldn't be based off tank size because some people will say, 1 to 2 bubbles a second for 10 to 40 gallons, and then 100 gallons, 2 to 8 bubbles per. I'm just making these numbers
Yeah,
up,
you're
but
going to
there
crank it
are
up a
kind of
little
like
more.
rules of thumb. Yeah, a little bit, but it's definitely going to
It's
depend
pretty hard to
largely
overdo
on.
it. It's hard to overdo, and to underdo, I find would be such a low bubbles per second. It would be real obvious. It's just like
Yeah.
that's not even two or
So
three.
on my 700 gallon, it's mostly Crips, some Sagittarius or whatever that's called. I can never remember plant names, but it
I
does have.
actually can't
It
either.
does. I think it does have a aqua 88 soil, and I've got some really nice lights. No CO2. Plants are doing fantastic. Should I add CO2 in anyway?
Well, that's a little tricky because what you may be doing now is setting up a certain ecology in there. There's just if you're getting a balance, which can happen, it that
Mm-hmm.
is that does that does work sometimes where you got a nutrient rich setting, but you don't have CO2 there driving the growth to absorb the excess nutrients. But for whatever reason, you got the combo right. It's doing well. You're happy with it. Now
Okay.
after the ecology is getting established, to come in and then put CO2 on it,
Yeah.
you're going to go through a period of disrupt. You're changing
Yeah. Okay.
the
Don't
things
mess
quite a
with it.
bit. So if you're happy with it, I'd never circle back and add CO2.
What I don't want to do is overgrowth and have to trim. The tank is 5 feet front to back. I got to get in it, but there's like 30 piranha in it, so I just don't want to do it. So
Sure.
I'm trying to make sure everything's healthy without me needing to touch it, and I haven't touched it since it's been set up, so it's been perfect. But
Right.
well, it's got algae issues and snail issues, but
Now that
otherwise,
tank I
fish and
think I
plants
saw
look
it's
great.
mostly don't you have mostly like Java fern and stuff in there?
No Java fern in that one.
Okay.
No, none.
So yeah, there's just certain plants that you could actually add some CO2 and it's going to give
There's
you.
more crypts,
Okay. Yeah,
cryptocorum,
see,
and stuff like
Crips, we
that.
don't want to go disrupting. If they're doing well without CO2, leave them alone. You go put CO2 on there,
Okay,
they're going to freak out and melt.
okay. Um, lighting. Over the last, even last 30 years, I guess 20 years, halogen lighting, LED lighting, fluorescent lighting, and it's all changing and it's all different and it's all. How important is lighting?
Yep.
And obviously not all lights is equal, but yeah, how important is it? And I
Yes.
guess
I
I
think it's
mean,
actually,
does it have
it's
to
not.
be? Go ahead. I think there's a bit of a delay between us right now. My internet connection's starting to fail.
Okay.
In
No,
about
it's not
12
that. I
minutes, my
wouldn't.
son's going to get home, and then it's done.
Okay, cool. So I wouldn't say it's that. It's not that. I wouldn't call it like important in the sense of I better get this right brand or something like that.
Okay.
In the LED age, which is going to be pretty much practical, you have to go out of your way to find a like a T5
Anything
fluorescent
different?
fixture and that sort
Yeah.
of thing. Those days are done. So
Yeah.
the good news about LED is even a cheesy LED is just closer to a sort of a usable output for plants.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't claim to know all the science behind that. I just know that that's
Yeah.
generally a thing we see that wasn't as true with fluorescent. But
Right.
but if it's made for plants in some kind of way, I find you're pretty much okay. So
Now, what
Yeah.
about the watts per gallon rule
Yeah.
of thumb?
So that's sort of
How
out
do
the
we do
window because
that
we don't
for
measure watts on the LEDs anymore. And the good
or
news about LED
lumens?
is most of them, not all, but the majority can be the dimming is either controlled, by an app, or there's something on board with the light. There's a little clicker thing, there's a Bluetooth, or if it didn't come with it, most of the power supplies, they have that connection where you can easily put an inline dimmer in there, which are readily available. You can get them for $10 on Amazon. And a lot of the lights, like the popular aquarium planet tank lights, like the twin stars, I
Hmm.
think they've come out with their own dimmer now, but for years they didn't have that. But you could easily integrate a cheap one from Amazon and dim it down pretty easily. So I find that to be more most of them need some dimming for most layouts. They're all a little too powerful. The podcast with Dennis Wong, we got into that topic specifically. He said, yes, all the lights now are just they're too powerful, and they're trying to outdo each other. And the brightness that you have access to is more than most people are going to
Ridiculous.
know how
Yeah.
to handle.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I've been noticing that a lot lately. I'm having far more success with little 7.5 watt LED bulbs
Yep.
and little tiny LED light strips than I've had with like some of the most expensive lights I've ever
Yeah.
owned.
That's the
And
good
it's been
news about
absolutely
LED.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Right. So lighting used to be more important because
Yep.
it was more difficult, of course, to pick the right one and get the right spectrum
All the
and get the right
bulbs
wattage. But
and
these
bulb
days, I guess,
combos.
yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like the industry is really zoned in on making sure that they're doing a
Well,
great job.
LED
And it's
just
so
gives you a huge range of control.
right.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to dosing and additives, when do we know we need to do it? Does every planet tank need it? And what would be like the best all around uh, nutrient that you could add? Or maybe it's a combination and it sells it
Yeah.
in a, I mean, they could just buy one thing, dump it in type deal.
Yep.
When
That's
do we
why
need it and what's the best?
yep. That's why I do love the 2 hour Aquarius line. I'm not paid for or sponsored by them in any way. I just think he's he even named the brand 2 hour Aquarius based on um, the idea of that
I'm going to have to get some.
Tim Ferriss's 4 hour work week thing is kind of where he got the idea. He says you shouldn't have to
I don't
spend
think I
more than
have
a
a
couple.
contact at Dennis. I'm going to
Well,
have to get you to tell him to send me some
yeah, for
because I'm
sure.
all over the place with additives.
No, so that's why I love his thing. I've been there and tried that on almost everything out there, and it's a unique formula. I'm sure it's been copied by now, but whatever. But he's got it down to where it's very easy to know when you need to start dosing, and he does give you an option for two different formulas, and one is made for when the tank is new. If you're going to start
Mhm.
dosing right away, he has a single dose product for that. And I tend to wait and I just go ahead and start. So there's APT1 and APT3 in the 2 hour Aquarius line. The three is what most aquariums will use long term. The
Mhm.
one is specifically for kind of more low tech or low metabolism, lower light plants. But you can
Okay.
also use the one in a highlight plant when it's new, because it's just going to have a more subdued formulation. So I tend to just wait and I don't dose really much of any liquids for about 2 weeks. I just let things stay real lean because I've learned with
Mhm.
his product that I can let it go a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and I'm seeing things looking pale. Moss will notoriously look almost yellow. Okay. And what I'm doing is things are growing because of light and CO2. I'm getting zero algae because I'm not adding anything willy nilly to the water column. And I've
Mhm.
learned that if I come in with the APT3, they're at about that, depends on the tank, but somewhere between 2 and 5 weeks, I'm coming in with that. In about 3 days of normal dosing, that yellow moss is totally green. I mean, so
Perfect.
that's been a consistent theme enough that so I wait. There's no right or
And you
wrong
don't
answer
use
to that.
anything else?
No,
Do you find like it's an all around fertilizer?
it
You don't
is.
really.
It is.
Okay, perfect.
And
I'm
my
gonna have to
my
get
my
some.
favorite troll right now on my Instagram, recently, Canadian guy by the way, called me out on that, saying, "Well, careful there because I when I used it, I had to dose massive additional potassium because my plants were suffering." And I said,
Hmm.
"Cool, no worries. I have never experienced that. I'm in a gallery full of, I've got 30 aquascapes under my immediate personal care,
That's
and I
got to
have
be
never dosed
frustrating
additional
too.
potassium.
Yeah.
I've never done that. So I
Yeah.
can't speak to your situation. Thanks for sharing, but I have never
Yeah.
seen
I
that.
don't have
So
that
I
problem.
still consider it the best. And it's what I emphatically endorse because I'm
Yeah.
working in kind of a bubble of like a lot of case studies going on at one time. And for
Yeah.
me to be able to walk around all those aquariums with one bottle and 1 milliliter dropper and
Yeah.
just dose approximately 1 mil per 10 gallons, give or take a little bit, depending on that particular tank, and pretty
Yeah.
much nine out of 10 getting it really right. That's a win to me. That's a win. There's always going to
Perfect.
be weird things happening in planted tanks, but one bottle, one dropper, and pretty much nailing it. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's great, especially if they have something for new tanks and then more established ones. Now, last kind of question. We could also I kind of wanted to get into like bacteria, like different algae issues, bacteria, snails, blah blah blah. But I think that we'll save that for another time.
Sure.
Um, what is the best plants to start with for the ego? And what I mean by that
Yep.
is easy to grow, will generally always be successful, will help you gain confidence because there's nothing worse than like dumping a ton of money and then watching it all melt away.
Yep. So I'd avoid
So,
tissue culture for one thing, because tissue culture plants are great and they're a huge asset to the hobby, but they have a propensity
I
for melting. Not all of them, but
I use
they
it a
are
lot.
more unpredictable. They're more
Yeah.
unpredictable. And just speaking to the question, like the
Yeah.
what's going
Yeah.
to give me
Yeah.
immediate impact. So that's why I love I call it greening because I'm making a really intense hardscape, no soil, and then I'm just adding green to the hardscape by way of our classic those plants tried and true. And now
Yeah.
there's so many more anubias. There are so many anubias available now. It's back in the day you
Yeah.
had barterai and nana and maybe
Yeah.
coffeeifolia. Now you've got color variations, I mean, I probably got a dozen different anubias with distinctive characteristics. They don't all kind of look
Mm.
like the same plant. Like sometimes they come up with the cultivar.
There's so many Anubias that I've seen some that I didn't know it was Anubias. So I'm like,
Yes,
because I've never seen it before. I was
right.
like, what the heck is
So it's a
that? And
good
I'm
time for
looking, I
that.
see, yeah.
So Anubias, bucephalandras, and
I keep hearing that.
yeah,
I've
and
never had
most of
it.
the
I've never tried
ferns.
it.
The cool
Right.
thing about them is, especially all the different Anubias and bucephalandras, is they look like something on day one. So the first day you
Yeah.
put it in the tank, it doesn't change that much. It doesn't have to go through a conversion from being grown emergent to now being submersed and all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can create a lot of immediate impact with those plants planted more heavily, of course, but because they're going to grow very slowly and it's going to take a while to fill in a spot. So if I take 5 pots instead of one and I make a little
Oh,
group
no.
of them there, it's going to look like they've been growing there for months or years even. So huge immediate impact, super low metabolism, do fine with or without CO2, definitely lower light, so there's less chance of algae in that. So just all around, epiphytes in general are
Mm-hmm.
very much the way to go. And epiphytes don't want to be planted in the soil or the substrate. They want to grow on a rock or a piece of wood.
Right.
So now we can take away that soil element, which is going to
Yeah.
only make startup and the early phase and all more challenging and difficult. So we're not dealing with any of the funny business that soils contribute to the water column, and we can have a real immediate impact straight away from those epiphyte plants.
Perfect. Yeah, you've answered a tremendous amount of like really important questions incredibly simply. Besides the substrate, you lost me there. I almost cut you off and said, "Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old." But
Right.
the
The takeaway there is soil. If you're going to use soil, use
sometimes it's
CO2.
tough to
Yeah. If I'm going to
right.
not use CO2, I avoid putting plants in the substrate at all. And I just do that greening
Oh,
style. Think of it as two
okay,
distinct styles:
right.
CO2 high tech or low tech, no CO2 in terms of when I
No
use soil
substrate
or I
or
don't.
no
Right.
no soil. Right.
Right.
Low tech is often confused with just using cheap equipment that isn't really high powered, but
Right.
really it's kind
Sure.
of adding in the soil and
These
adding in
days,
the
it usually
CO2.
denotes non CO2 in a planted tank. When they say low tech, that pretty much means they didn't use CO2 for the most part.
Right. So are we packing in as many plants as we can at first or start off slow?
Yes,
which one is going to get more
I don't
success.
regard, I don't do anything with that whole idea that says, a bunch of plants is going to take up the nutrients faster and there'll be less algae.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that can be a thing, but it's not necessary. Why? Because Mr. Amano never did that. He made a layout. He created a composition. He got it as close as he could to looking finished on the first day and then grew that into form. Whether it had one
Hmm.
species of plant or it had 50 didn't matter. The sequence was the same. So that's an old school hack that's not ineffective, but it is an old school hack for kind of trying to use the plants to soak up more of the nutrients going around. And Amano just said, well, I don't want to have to put some plants in that I don't want in my composition long term for some sort of practical means of controlling algae. So I'm just going to skip that and I'm going to manage it a different way because
Right.
now that's not to say that's not a viable approach. I'm saying that what most people want to do now with plants in a freshwater aquarium is aquascape. They want to make that
Hmm.
cool underwater scene, and there's a very specific way you do that. And it's usually not by, well, I'm going to jam some plants in here over here. I'm going to take them out later and maybe put something else that, I mean, you can do all that, but it's hard. The scene the aquascape that inspired you on social media or as you're scrolling through your phone and see some guy
Hmm.
in Indonesia blowing your mind with some, crazy scape that he made. No one did it that way. They've tried to finish it on the first day before there's even water in it. They're getting it as done as they can, and then they just
Yeah.
want to bring that into form. And
Right.
that requires a different sequence than like, well, I'm going to put a bunch of this, some stem plant in there that's going to grow fast to use up the nutrients. You can do all that, but to me, that just creates more headaches, more hassle, more management, something I don't even want in there long term, maybe. So
Yeah.
that's all distracting from my creation of a composition. And so
Interesting.
it's a thing because the science of it does work, but I'm telling you, you don't need to do that to not have an algae problem. There's just other variables that you're going to control.
Interesting. It's interesting to see the impact that one man has had.
He
Uh,
made Joey. He invented all 100% of it. He invented. Now it's now
yeah.
evolving. Now, of course, but
Right.
all of it is we owe
Hmm.
to literally only Mr. Amano. There isn't a second guy. It's him, and then everything has spread from him. Rimless tank, glass filter pipe, clear tubing, CO2,
Yeah.
strong lighting, soil substrate, carpeting plant, using
Yeah.
shrimp and OCat, autocinculus catfish to control algae natural. 100% is this man.
Damn. Interesting stuff. And well, thanks for simplifying it for me, Jeff. That's a tremendous amount of. I think that's going to prove helpful, especially for people that are really want to, potentially recreate something you have shown them or something they've seen. This is going to make it tremendously easier for them. So
Cool, man.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't. I'm not going to use this information either. I'll definitely be fixing some stuff now. We made it
Well, man,
things.
of course,
Few things
call,
make sense.
hit me up anytime. You have questions or anything, we're on the text
I probably should
communication
have.
now.
I probably should just texted you questions instead of like
Well, it's
humiliating
true.
myself.
At the same time, Joey, and in closing, I would say, you're a guy that's clearly got a way of doing things. It's your own intuition, your own experience, your own observation. You're immersed in it. You marinate in this stuff all day. And
Yeah,
so you've
I
got
guess
to
I
feel.
never.
You got to feel, man. So you may be able to do things and pull it off that I look at and go, man, I wouldn't have done it that way at all. But damn it, damn it
Yeah,
if you didn't do it and pull it off and it looks great. So
yeah,
that's the thing about aquariums. There's not always a set formula, but to the
that's
extent
right.
to which we can create a formula, it really,
Hmm.
I find, helps things scale.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely,
well, man, I got to get going, but this has been amazing, brother. And I love that you
absolutely.
just kind of interviewed me. Super cool. And no one else could pull that off but you. But amazing
I
conversation, man. I'm going to chop this up into lots of good stuff. But
40 clips.
right. But it's been great, Joey, and I appreciate it so much, man. And I
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime.
really look forward to talking to you again. And I'm here for you anytime, man. Love what you do.
My pleasure.
All right.
Anytime.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.